Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Kaiser. I'm the coordinator of the East Bay Green Home Tour, and I'm really glad that you're joining us today. We're going to be touring 12 homes overall, but we're just going to be touring 6 homes today and then 6 homes next Sunday. Today, you're going to hear about air quality in the kitchen. You're going to watch an induction cooking demonstration, and you're going to see a diverse range of green home features. Everyone who signed up for today's program will also receive Zoom login for next Sunday's event as well. And the recordings of this event will land on YouTube in the coming weeks. So I will definitely send out an email when that to everyone who registered to attend today when the video recordings of these are available. And you can also visit the event website, eastbaygreenhome.com, if you miss any of the program. I want to start off today by introducing you to the team that is behind the scenes and who's helping me put this on. We've got Rebecca Milliken from the City of Berkeley's Office of Energy and Sustainable Development, and she's supporting the speakers today and helping to manage the Q&A. Plus, her El Cerrito home is featured next Sunday. And we've got Dania Shorter, the Ecology Center's Community Engagement Program Director, and she is graciously hosting this event on the Ecology Center's Zoom platform and helping with essential tech support. Her all-electric Oakland apartment is featured today as well. We've also got members of the Berkeley Electrification Working Group, Tom, Eric, Chris, and Susie, and they're going to be helping out in the chat stream today, answering questions and dropping helpful links. The Electrification Working Group is a branch off of the Berkeley Climate Action Coalition, which is a joint effort co-convened by the Ecology Center and the City of Berkeley. We are all very intertwined. And lastly, I want to mention Kathy Kramer of the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour, who has been a vital partner, and I will introduce her shortly. Oops. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. So these are the event sponsors that made the Green Home Tour possible. Our sponsors are some of the most active organizations and businesses in the movement to get fossil fuels out of our homes. These are the people crafting city and state policies and plans to transition our electric grid to 100% green energy. Stop Waste, El Cerrito Environment, MCE. 350 Bay Area is organizing residents to fight climate change, and the Building Decarbonization Coalition is helping government entities get fossil fuels out of buildings. Bayrin is helping homeowners with free advice and rebates. And the Bridge Association of Realtors, their Climate Action Committee, is giving home buyers and sellers advice on green improvements. Electrify My Home, Eco Performance Builders, Blue Rock Home, and Harvest Thermal are installing heat pumps and insulation. I also want to acknowledge the Margulies Kelly Climate Action and Health Fund as a generous partner. You'll definitely hear me name check many of these businesses and organizations over the course of the tour. They're useful to know. I want you to know that this tour is a labor of love and put together on a shoestring budget. My teenage son, Jude, handled the videography, drone shots, and the editing. In an ordinary year, I would hardly see him, but this past year with COVID gave us the opportunity to work on this fun and meaningful project together. If you find this Green Home Tour useful or inspiring, please consider donating or support the event at eastbaygreenhome.com/donate. I also want you to know that video takes up a lot of bandwidth. So depending on the speed of your internet connection and your Wi-Fi strength, your viewing experience may vary. I want to go ahead and introduce Dania Shorter, who's going to give you a quick tutorial on Zoom.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me just fine. Welcome to the Green Home Tour. Super excited for today. At this point, I assume a ton of us have been on Zoom for over a year, so you probably are very familiar with how to navigate the control panel. We are in a webinar Zoom today, so that's why you'll see only very limited options down at the bottom. Everyone came in muted without video. So don't be alarmed. It's not just you. No one, unless you're a host or panelist, will be able to share or unmute themselves unless asked by one of us. Otherwise, at the bottom of your control panel, you should be able to see 3 different options. You should be able to see your chat. Now the chat is going to be used for comments. Feel free to chat. You do need to select, I'm noticing that people are chatting with panelists only. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but you can click the 3 dots on your right-hand corner when you press chat, and you can click whether you want your comment to go to just the panelist or panelists and attendees. So that's just a quick tip there if you're wanting to chat. And just a reminder, chat is for comments, introducing yourselves, making general comments about the presentations. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves or with each other. If you recognize someone in the attendee list, feel free to say hey in the chat, but it is not for questions. Another option down there you will see is Q&A, and it has those little chat boxes, and that is where all your questions should go. We have over 1,000 people registered today, so questions will get lost if you put them in the chat. So please make sure to use the Q&A for any questions that you have. We have a ton of different videos and a speaker today. So as specific as you can get with your question, if it's about a specific house or for a specific person, feel free to put that in there with your questions. Your questions may be selected during, we're going to have a brief Q&A after each home tour, and take some questions there. And if they are not able to get answered there will be an extended Q&A in next Sunday's program on the 13th. So we invite you to come back for that extended Q&A to see if you can get your questions answered live. And then the third way to ask questions would be to click the link that's going to be, it's going to continue to be put in the chat, and that is a Google form. So if your question is not answered live, you're not able to stay on, or you're not able to make it to next week's program, feel free to put your question in a Google chat, and in the coming weeks, you will get a response to your question if it wasn't already answered here in the program. I see some comments already that there's a black bar across the screen. Bear with us. We're doing our best in the back end to work through some technical difficulties, but we will try to keep you all the best experience that we can. As you can see, we have a jam-packed program for you all today. 6 home tour videos, including my own home, super excited, and an expert talk on indoor air quality with Brady Seal. So we have a ton of stuff going on. You also will see at the bottom of your screen the option to raise your hand. We can actually test that out right now. We have a raise your hand feature. You'll only be able to raise it and lower it. And if you click it, once you click it, it raises it. And if you click it again, it'll lower your hand. This will primarily be used if a panelist or speaker or Amy wants to just gauge the audience, get a temperature check on what's going on, and ask a general question. So we can test it out right now. We might ask for a show of hands for a question such as, raise your hand if you live in Alameda County. Perfect. I'm already seeing a ton of hands. Counting 70, 75 and counting. Awesome. And then let's test that lower the hand. So if you click it one more time, that should lower it. Sometimes you don't notice your hand is raised until you try to raise it again. No big deal, but just an FYI. And let's try again. Raise your hand if you live in Contra Costa County. Perfect. Looks like we've got the raise your hand feature down. 50, most 50 folks living in Contra Costa County. Awesome. So yeah, just that's a quick kind of housekeeping, how to Zoom. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the questions about Zoom, or if you're not seeing something right, again, as Amy said, different Wi-Fi connections, computers, if you're on an iPad versus a phone, a lot of those things will change. We're going to do our best on our end to make sure this experience is enjoyable for everyone. But if you have specific questions about how to engage during this event, feel free to contact us either through the Q&A or the chat. Contact our panelist. And I believe I am passing it back to Amy to kick off the tour with a short overview about greening your home. Thank you all for being here.
For this tour, I want to get you thinking about the future. Oops. Sorry, I'm just twiddling the controls here. Okay, for this tour, I want to get you thinking about the future. Anytime that you improve your home, anytime you replace a dead appliance, you are engaging with the future. And instead of operating on autopilot or just doing what's been done before, stop and ask yourself, will this upgrade or appliance make sense in 10 or 20 years? Do I still want to be burning fossil fuels in 2040? Will this change make me healthier and more resilient in the future? With climate change, our future and our present, quite frankly, presents some big challenges. There's going to be more hot days, longer and more intense wildfire seasons. There'll be more spare the air days from smoke, heat, and smog. We're going to need cool spaces to retreat to and spaces with clean air to breathe. We'll need to find resilient ways to meet our power needs when the grid is down due to wildfire danger. Increased drought means we'll need to use water very efficiently. Throughout the Green Home Tour, you'll see a wide variety of features, from bird-safe windows to metal roofs to rainwater catchment systems. You'll notice a central through line, however, and that is homes cutting the cord on natural gas. This is called electrification or building decarbonization. It means switching out your gas appliances for high efficiency electric alternatives. The main 4 appliances in most of our homes are our furnace, gas stoves, water heaters, and clothes dryers. You may have others like your hot tub or a fireplace insert, but those are the 4 biggies. As you see from the infographic on the left, transportation, as you probably imagined, is the biggest source of California's greenhouse gas emissions. The second biggest source, though, is our buildings, i.e. our homes and other buildings. And the photos that I have on the right are these little exhaust ports that are coming out of my home. And each of these is like a dirty little tailpipe pumping out greenhouse gas and other pollutants like nitrogen oxides, which react to form smog. Natural gas is dirty from tip to tail. Gas wells and the vast network of gas pipes beneath the ground are leaking an enormous amount of methane into the environment. Recent studies estimate that the US's natural gas system has leaked about 2.3% of all the gas it has ever produced. When gas is burned, it produces CO2 and a bunch of other pollutants too. The good news is that natural gas has killed coal. The even better news is that we can now ditch natural gas and move to clean, renewable energy in our homes. This week, I read a great quote from science writer John Kerry, and he wrote, "We already have the basic technologies we need to slay the monster of climate change. Moreover, these technologies are not just affordable now, but they continue to get cheaper and better at a stunning pace. And new ideas are constantly emerging. In fact, humanity may look back after 20 years and wonder why we ever thought it was so hard or so expensive to move beyond the era of fossil fuels." There's my slide deck here. When I talk about the grid, I mean the massive network of wires and transformers that carry electricity from power sources to your home. California passed a bill to generate all of its electricity from renewable resources, such as solar and wind, by 2048. And so every year we're getting closer to that goal. Us here that live in the East Bay, our grid is actually getting cleaner at a very fast clip. Our local community choice energy providers, which those of us in Alameda County, East Bay Community Energy, or EBCE, and then people in Contra Costa, Marin, Napa, and Solano counties use MCE. These guys already offer electricity service that's greener and cheaper than PG&E's. How clean is the energy on the East Bay grid? If you want to know exactly what's powering your electricity, just Google MCE or EBCE and power mix. Spoiler alert, mostly we're being run on solar, wind, and hydro with a pinch of gas, a pinch of nuclear, and no coal whatsoever. And if you want, right now, you can opt up to 100% renewable power, which is all California wind and solar and nothing else. And Rebecca's going to drop the links in the chat if you want to know how to immediately opt up to 100%. I did it recently. It's super easy. It took me like 5 minutes and it just cost me an extra few bucks a month. There are many ways to think about home greening, and one way is to approach it using 3 big concepts: climate, wise resource use, and toxicity. Our goal for this tour is to get you thinking about how you might change your home to align with your values and your desires for health and resiliency for both yourself and the environment. On this tour, you'll see homes and neighbors that are typical of East Bay neighborhoods. And there's no single path that people are taking to green their homes. Some are low tech, some are high tech, but they are all heading in the same direction, which is to say, away from fossil fuels and towards clean air, water, and a resiliency that comes from generating your own energy or generating your own food. One of the things I love most about living in California is that I consider it an experimental and solution-oriented culture that leans into the future. We are full of early adopters and we lead on so much. And even in California, there are hotspots of leadership like the Bay Area, like the East Bay. I remember a few years ago hearing Kathy Durbin from 350 Bay Area. She was reporting back from having attended a UN International Climate Conference. And she said that people from all over the world are watching what California is doing. And what we do here really matters. So we need to take our role seriously as influencers and as the vanguard. Sorry, my slide deck is a little out of control here. The changes that these homeowners that we feature have made have really enhanced their life. And I want to push against the idea that a green home future is stripped down, uncomfortable, all about scarcity and sacrifice. A lot of these changes that they've made are about pushing into abundance, the abundance of sun, wind, the health and wildlife that rebounds when we stop poisoning the environment. Here's a list of assumptions that a lot of people hold. And I hope that this tour spurs you to rethink these. I want to mention something about the last one. Some people can afford home upgrades and others just can't. And so there's a justice issue about who gets left behind, saddled with dirty air, hot homes, and high utility bills. Behind the scenes, East Bay cities and nonprofits and energy providers are focusing a lot on how to bring everyone along. And I also want you to know that things are changing very fast. Every year, new technology gets cheaper, new rebates come online, new programs for low-income residents. So if you discover that something is out of reach for you right now, don't assume that that will always be the case. It might even change next year or later the same year, because the landscape is changing very rapidly. So keep checking in and keep focused on how to green. Okay, so let's start looking at homes. To kick off the home tours, I would like to introduce Kathy Kramer, who's the founder and coordinator of the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour.
Good morning, Amy.
Hi, Kathy. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, well, first of all, let me start my video. Sorry about that. Here I am. So tell us why you started the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour.
Well, 30 years ago, when I became interested in gardening with native plants, it was hard. It was hard to figure out what native plants to put in my garden. It was hard to find those native plants. There weren't designers who specialized in designing native plant gardens. Sometimes the plants that I chose died, and because I designed my garden myself, it wasn't very attractive. So I remember thinking one day, it just shouldn't be this hard to garden with native plants. In 2005, I started the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour. And through the tour, people can visit native plant gardens and talk to hosts and volunteers. They can look at the website throughout the year and find designers, find native plant nurseries, look at plant lists, look at photographs of hundreds of native plant gardens in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. And having those resources available to people so easily, I think, has made it easier to garden with California native plants.
So you came up with the idea of creating this green home tour in the first place. And why don't you tell us what made you have that idea in the first place?
So last year, my husband, Mike, and I embarked on a remodeling home for our house. And we knew we wanted to make our house as environmentally sound as we could. And we didn't have much guidance on greening the home from our architect. So we had a steep learning curve to get up on our own. And it took a lot of time and energy to research our options and make the decisions that we did. And it was hard and time consuming. And during this project, Mike and I realized that we wanted to share our hard earned knowledge with other people and hope that our experience would make it easier for others to who wanted to put in a heat pump or an induction range or solar panels. And that's the idea of the virtual green home tour. And knowing that I didn't have the time to coordinate another tour, I started asking around, looking for someone who could run this tour. And happily, I was introduced to Amy, who had the passion for electrification and both the event coordinating experience and the personal connections to make a virtual green home tour a success. And it has been really a pleasure to see what you've accomplished, Amy.
Thank you. I just want to let everybody know that Kathy has been so valuable to me in providing guidance for this tour, sharing her processes and also her lessons learned. And Kathy, I've just appreciated your help so much.
You're welcome.
So let's do a show of hands. How many of you logged on right now are here because you heard about the East Bay Green Home Tour from Kathy and the Natives Tour? Woo, look at those numbers go up. Yay. That's exciting. So Kathy, what started you down this path of greening your home in the first place?
Well, Mike and I have two children, and we're worried about their future and their children's future. And we wanted to do the best that we could to preserve the environment for them. Our remodeling project really started with planning for solar panels. And for at least 10 years, we had intentions to generate energy from our own rooftop, and we were just waiting until we replaced the roof with our remodeling project to do so. And in the beginning, we didn't know more than that. We didn't know more than that we would put on solar panels. And then Mike attended the Electrification Expo about 2 years ago, which was put on by the city of Berkeley and a number of other agencies and organizations. And we learned a number of things from the expo. We learned that first, behind our cars, our homes and buildings are the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. And also that we could reduce our own carbon footprint by getting off natural gas and running our home with electricity that we generated from our own solar panels. And next, Mike learned about heat pumps and that it was possible to heat our home with clean solar energy, which we could generate from our solar panels. And also that if we put in a heat pump, we would get free air conditioning, as heat pumps both heat and cool air. We would never have considered putting in air conditioning, but the fact that it came as a freebie with our heat pump was a great. And Mike also heard a talk about the adverse health impacts of cooking with gas. And these include greatly increased rates of asthma in people living in homes with gas stoves. This includes lowered IQs in children and even heart problems. And he said, Kathy, if you heard what I heard about the health impacts of cooking with gas, you would get that Wedgwood out of the house immediately. And I really loved my Wedgwood. And it was a hard decision to get rid of it. But I realized that I didn't have the right to inflict asthma on our young daughter. And we wound up buying an induction range, and we like it very much. We also had a large solar panel system installed, as we wanted to generate all the energy that we needed to run our house and to be able to provide extra energy back to the grid. And it's been just massively fun and incredibly satisfying to see how much energy our solar panels generate each day and to know what a boon to the environment they are.
Well, I saw a lot of hands go up when I asked who'd heard about the home tour through you, Kathy. So it's great to have all you native plant gardeners with us here today. And so let's now meet Mike. Hi, Mike. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
So now we're going to, shall we go and do the video of your home tour now?
Well, look at our home.
That sounds good. Let's
Okay.
do it. Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Kathy Kramer.
We've lived here in this house about 30 years and just completed a 10-month remodel where we added a lot of green features. So we've had a remodel in mind for the last really 10 years. We finally got a chance to do it in this last year. And we knew we both have worked in the environmental field for many years, and we knew we wanted to make it as green as possible. So we incorporated that into the design.
So we've had this remodel in mind for quite a while, and we knew that we wanted to get solar panels. And then Mike went to an electrification expo that was put on by the city of Berkeley and Bayron and a few other organizations. And we really got religion about electrification. And that's what introduced us to the idea of getting the heat pump and the induction stove.
Welcome to our house. We thought we'd first show you our heat pump system. So this is the air intake for the heat pump. Before, we just had a gravity heater in the floor, and now we have heating and cooling in every room. It's a ducted system, so every room has a little vent like that for heating or cooling.
And one of the great things about the heat pump is that we basically got free air conditioning with it. We would never have bought air conditioning before, but because heat pumps work both ways, both heating and cooling homes, we basically got the air conditioning for free. Well, about 2 years ago, Mike went to the Electrification Expo in Berkeley, and when he came home, he told me, Kathy, if you heard what I heard about the adverse air pollution impacts of cooking with gas indoors, you would get the stove out of the house immediately. We had a beautiful Wedgwood stove, and I have to say, I loved my Wedgwood stove. I loved cooking on it, and it was a beautiful device, and I'd cooked many meals on it for 30 years. But I listened to the Brady Seals report and read her report and found out that cooking indoors with gas was one of the most polluting things that happens indoors, and that air pollution levels could reach levels that would be illegal if they were out of doors. So after thinking really hard about it, I decided to let go of the Wedgwood. I have asthma, my husband has asthma, and I didn't feel that it was right to inflict that on our daughter. So we got this GE induction stove. We just moved back home last month, so we've cooked on it for about 6 weeks now. And I have to say, it's a very nice stove. It's not my Wedgwood, but it's easy to operate, and it's easy to clean, and it is, not emitting, nasty gases indoors, and I feel very happy about that decision. All right, well, welcome to our bathroom. So there are a few different green features in the bathroom. One is the electric dryer. We are replacing everything that was gas with electric appliances in this house. And the next thing is the skylight. And we knew that we wanted as many skylights as we could get, and we just love them. They make the house so light and sunny. We don't turn the lights on as often. But because these skylights came with solar powered screens, we were able to get a 26% federal rebate off of both the cost and the installation, which made them less expensive than buying the skylight without the screen. So we got this nice feature, and it also saved us money. The third thing that we got is this Brondell Swash 1000 bidet. I had read about them, and people seemed to love them, and we had a friend of a friend who had one, and she said her only regret was that she had not gotten one earlier. So we got 2 bidets, and I have to say we love them too. You, for one thing, feel fresh as a daisy, but for the other thing, they're apparently much more environmentally sound than using toilet paper. Trees aren't chopped down. They don't have to be pulped. All the water is saved, the chlorine, the transportation, the creation of the packaging. And I read a Scientific American article about the benefits of the environmental benefits of using bidets instead of toilet paper. And we are big fans. So our bidet is just a bidet seat. It's fitted onto our own regular toilet, and it's just the seat top and a water connection that were added. We did not have to replace the toilet. Before we remodeled, we had a lot of problems with birds hitting our windows and dying. Before we left the house for 10 months during the remodel project, we buried 3 birds in 6 months. And so one of my goals for moving back in was that we stop the bird collisions. And one of the things we did was get kaleidoscope screening. So this large picture window has an exterior screen that adheres to it. We put it up while the scaffolding is on because we're actually up on a 2nd story here. And what happens is birds see glare, they see reflection in the glass, they think they can fly through it, which is why they hit windows. But the glare is stopped because of the kaleidoscope screen.
Also, to protect against bird collisions, the other windows in the house are all double hung. And the reason we chose those is double hung windows have exterior screens, so that protects against bird collision.
So another thing that we did to protect the birds and moths is to put in dark skies at night certified lights. So these we got through, I think, Home Depot. And the dark skies at nights mean that the lights shine down. They don't shine up. So these cans keep the light just coming down here where you want it. And another thing that we did is we got these motion sensor lights are only on motion sensor at night. They don't stay on all night long. So this protects migrating birds that get confused or by the lights of our cities, and also protects moths if you don't have so much light on at night.
So one of the other choices we made with the house is we used a very light roof shingle, so more sunlight is reflected, the sun is heating the house less, and so we have less work to cool the house. One component of the house we knew we would do is a solar panel array, and we chose a large system, 23 panels, with the intention of one day having 2 electric cars to charge. Currently we have 1. And it's not being driven much given COVID. So currently we're producing about 3 times the energy that we're consuming, and the rest is going back to the grid.
So we decided to purchase our system instead of leasing it. We put on 23 panels. It's 8 kilowatts. It's producing much more energy than we are using, and we wanted to do that. We wanted to make sure that we were generating more than we used. We used Sunwork, which is a nonprofit that only installs on homes with low energy bills. They use trained volunteers to install the system, which saves on labor costs. And they also don't mark up their materials cost, and they pass those savings on to the homeowner. So we felt that our large system was really very economical, and it should be paid off in 13 years or less. And at that point, we should be saving about $1,000 a year from then on out. Well, we have a California native plant garden. This garden is about 12 years old. It was designed by 4 Dimensions Landscape Company with help from Kelly Marshall Garden Design. We also have about a dozen different kinds of fruit trees that line the perimeter of the yard. One feature that we especially love is the pond. The moving water in the pond has brought in a number of birds. In fact, before we changed the garden, we didn't see much happening in the backyard, but since we have converted it to a native plant garden, we've seen more than 30 species of birds right here in our little lot in San Pablo.
So one thing to consider if you're doing a major remodel or a house construction is the foundation is a major contributor to the carbon footprint of your project. What you can do to mitigate for that somewhat is specify a low carbon concrete mix. We were able to do that with our house with the help of Verdant Structural Engineering in Berkeley. We got our concrete mix from Sugar City and Pinole, and it's a low impact, low carbon concrete mix. Well, thank you for joining us on our green home tour.
So in summary, I think we wanted to say that we hope that touring our house with us helps you with your own project. Our contact information is on the website, on the site page, and you're welcome to email us with any questions you have. We're happy to answer them, and we hope that this helps you on your own path to getting a greener home.
Thank you, Kathy and Mike. Are you here for us to do a little live Q&A?
We are.
Great. So let's see here. I'm going to ask the first question, and then Rebecca's going to pull one out of the Q&A fields. So first of all, sorry about that plant right in your face at the end on the end shot. How did you, I learned about dark skylights from you. I didn't even know that that was a thing. And so I was wondering, how do you track down lights that are, is dark skylights a label that you can search for, or how do you go about finding dark skylights?
You can search on Dark Skies at Night certification. And there's a group, I think it may be called Dark Skies at Night, may have a different name, that is educating people about the importance of keeping lights off at night, about using certain colors of light bulb. Mike can talk about that in a moment, I think, and about buying lights that keep the light shining down. And so we found those lamps that you saw in the video at Home Depot, so they were easy to find. And then we even got a lit house number, like we were required in our new remodel to have our house number lit at night. And since that's going to stay on all night long, we got a little cap for it through Dark Skies at Night.
And I think on the Home Depot site, can't you search for
Yeah, I
Dark
think you can
skies?
even search it. They're
Yeah,
not hard
so
to
you can-
find.
you can search for dark skies. There's some kind of label they have in the Home Depot website where you can identify which lights meet the criteria.
And if people want to find out more about that, they can look at any of the Doug Tallamy talks, Tallamy. We have some on the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour website, and he talks about the importance of keeping lights off at night.
Great. So another quick question I have is that sometimes greening your home is like sort of hacking a path through the jungle, where you're just trying to figure it out on your own. And you and Michael were really motivated to make it easier for other people. So how could you possibly, how might you help in that way?
I think you have our email information on the site page on your website. I also have my email, and my phone number is on the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour. If people go to that website and go to contact me, that's me. So you're welcome to email us. You're welcome to call us. We're happy to tell you about our decisions. And also, if you look at the site page on the East Bay Green Home Tour website, we've listed links and products and the green features of our home. But we're happy to be a personal resource to people.
Yeah, you acquire so much knowledge in doing a remodel, and especially a green home remodel. And it's a shame because in our case, we're not going to remodel again.
Never.
So
One and done.
to have all that knowledge gathered and then never to be used again, we hope it will be used again by helping others with advice. And we're far from experts, but you can get our take as regular homeowners on how we made our choices and how we're doing with the things we installed and that kind of thing.
And can I also say, it was so helpful to us to talk with other people, to have guides through the wilderness, like Eric Ahrens and his wife. They invited us over to their house to see their heat pump. We wanted to see a heat pump. Rebecca Milliken talked to us, and we wanted to talk to other people and see what they had done. And it just made a lot of difference. And also, we were just so motivated by what we did with our home. Our solar panels are they're so fun and so exciting. And it feels like such a wonderful thing to have gotten our solar panels up and to have gotten basically everything except our water heater now is off of gas, and it just feels great. We'd love to help other people in their journey.
Great. So Rebecca Milliken, why don't you pull something from the Q&A? What's a question that we have from the audience?
Sure, just a few things. Kathy and Mike, there are so many questions. People are really excited. Folks are also wondering if we are going to save the chat and the Q&A because there's concern that the resources are being mentioned and it's going too fast to write it all down. So we will, we can save the chat, and we can afterwards definitely send out, anyone who registered will send out a summary of links. But I do want to remind everyone that if your question is not answered, you can also put it in on this Google form that I'll drop in the chat right now. And you can feel free that this is going to, we'll share this with the homeowners and the tenants who are on the tour. And if they or members of the Green Home Tour will get back to you in a few weeks. So, so many good questions for you. We have about 40 about just your video, but this one maybe is for Mike. You were talking about concrete, and there are two questions about it. So one person wants to know, why is the foundation a major source of greenhouse gas? And then how much more expensive, part two, how much more expensive is it to use a low carbon concrete mix over, I guess, your standard? So maybe you can just address those two.
Sure. So again, I'm no expert, but apparently in the production of concrete, it releases a tremendous amount, both in the production of the concrete and in the curing of the concrete. It releases a tremendous amount of carbon dioxide. So yeah, you'd think, if you had to select something that you thought had carbon impact, very low on most people's list, certainly on mine would have been the concrete foundation. So it's quite a surprise, but it has a very significant impact. And then secondly, I believe we paid nothing more for the other concrete mix.
I don't think there was any extra cost.
And they, I believe what they do is they add more fly ash to the mix. That's the main technique, is my understanding of how they make it lower carbon impact. And of course, they make sure that the mix still meets all the strength requirements that house foundation needs. So you're not compromising strength or any of those qualities you need in the concrete.
That was a service that was provided at no charge by our structural engineers, which is Verdant Structural Engineers in Berkeley.
Great, thank you. That's really good to know. Some folks, they wanted to know, every contractor that you use and whatnot. I'm just going to throw a link into the chat for the Bay Ren Home Plus program. These, your contractor I know is part of this program too. This is a way that you can also access rebates that are available for electrifying your home. And next Sunday, there'll be a deeper dive on this. But let me throw that link into the chat. But maybe, Kathy, did you already mention who you used to do?
Our contractor was Sebastian Frances, and a link is in, if you go to the site area of the East Bay Green Home Tour website, near the very bottom is the link for Sebastian, and also we had two architects, and the one who helped us toward the end is also there, linked there.
Great. And your heat pumps though were installed, the various heat pumps and your air source heat furnace?
Our heat pump was installed by Eco Performance Builders, and we interviewed 7 HVAC contractors, and we picked them because they were clearly like heads and tails above the rest of the pack. And
in terms of their proposal of what they would do, describing what they would do,
sealing up the house, professionalism, and the stove. Yeah. What'd you ask about?
No, that was it. It was the various contractors. So for all the folks who are so curious and really express so much interest in your home, remember I also put the link from Kathy's Bringing Back the Natives tour, where you can reach out to her directly, or you can ask questions through that Google Forms, and I'll drop those links in just a moment. So okay, Amy, I think we're back to you.
Yeah, we need to move along, but Kathy and Mike, if you want to be active after you go off screen, active in the chat, you might want to answer some folks' questions and linger a little bit.
Sure.
We'd be happy.
But thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, Amy, before you jump on, it's Rebecca here.
Uh-huh.
Just wanted to let you know, we did get some advice from an attendee about how to get rid of the gray strips on your screen.
Okay.
So I'm going to send that to you separately.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Oh, actually, first I need to introduce this. Just a moment. Now it's time to check out the Berkeley bungalow of my great friend Ellen, who's an art teacher who lives with her wife and teenagers in the San Pablo Park neighborhood. You'll notice in the video as the drone flies over her house that Ellen's neighbors have solar too. Ellen loves to talk with her neighbors and has influenced them to get solar, and now they're asking her about heat pumps. So this is how trends get mainstreamed. Adoption of technologies happens in clusters, just like this. So I just want to encourage you to own how influential you are. So let's roll the video.
Oh, hi, my name's Ellen. So this is my house that I bought in 2002. And I moved to Berkeley, California from Washington, D.C., and I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I bought the best house I could for the money that I had. And I've lived in this house for 18 years. And when I saw this house, I looked at a whole bunch of houses. And when I saw this house was old. It's from 1921, but I could tell that very little had ever been restructured, or there were no like renovations. I could see that like one family had owned this house for a really long time, and that was the truth. After I learned everything, the family owned this for 65 years, and I liked how it was in this very simple state because I really like to work on things myself. I got interested in greening because I wasn't from California, but then when I moved out here and I met all these people and they were talking about environmentalism in a way that I had never really paid that much attention to because I led a very urban life before then, I was like, I could do that. Okay, so why don't you guys come in and check out my house? So one of the biggest things that I did in my house was, during the pandemic, I took on this big project, which was that we completely redid our energy system for our house. And we went with a heat pump. And it was a big undertaking because in the past, we had a floor gravity furnace that used to sit in between these two walls right here. You can't see it anymore because they took it out and they patched it up. This thing, which was probably from like original to the house, this house is from 1921, it worked for about 8 years and then it just stopped working. And my wife and I are she's very eco-minded, and she was just like, put a sweater on, get under the blankets, whatever, and that's how we lived for a while. And then something happened where we had other electrical problems in our house, so we started to kind of like address different electrical things. We got a new panel, and I took on getting the heat pump. And the heat pump is really cool. It was a whole new system. It sits in the attic above my house. And it's a Japanese system, very high tech. You can barely hear it on. It's like a little cat purring at you. And what's cool about it, it's a heating system, it's an air conditioning system, but it's also a air filtration system, which I have come to really like. If there's some like smells going on or somebody cooks, I just go over here to my Nest, turn that fan on, and boom, it's gone. Well, one thing that I think is different about my mentality about owning a house compared to other people is that I was a museum professional, and my friends who bought homes, old homes, we were really into kind of like almost restoring a house and not renovating a house. So when I bought this house and I came in, I saw these real wooden cabinets that were from the 1920s when this house was built. And most people would be like, just rip those suckers out. But I thought, well, why rip out a product that is probably more expensive than the one I'm going to put in? Because this is all real wood. So what I did was I sanded them all down and I painted them. And I did that 18 years ago. And then in the pandemic, when I didn't have anything to do, I just repainted these all again. Because I like the idea of my old kitchen. I don't want to have a kitchen that looks disjointed from my bungalow. Because this is a bungalow kitchen. Okay, so one of the first things that I did that was really moving towards like a greener house and away from my kind of Eastern ideas about how a house works is that I had a washer and dryer in my kitchen. And I noticed that when I walked around and looked at houses, that people had their washer and dryers like in these closets outside of their houses. And just at the time where I thought, oh, I'm going to do that, I was reading about the gray water systems, which I thought were really, really intriguing. And so I made this project where I moved my washer and dryer out into this closet that I made. I built a deck. I had a plumber give me a cold line. And then I moved my washer and dryer out. And then I built this like little house around it. And that was great. And the other thing about it is that I made it into a gray water system. So when I bought this house, I bought it for a couple different reasons. It was this beautiful magnolia tree right here. It was this big old garage, and it was my clawfoot tub. Those three things I still have in my house. But I also bought this house because it had this incredible backyard that looked absolutely nothing like the backyard that is here now. It had grass, it had chain link fence, and I probably had that lawn for maybe 2 or 3 years, and as soon as I started reading about gray water and what is the California landscape, I was like, with the yard. So then my yard became like my outdoor laboratory. So in 2009, one of my friends, Lisa David, who's a wonderful woman who's really into permaculture gardening, was like, Ellen, you should get chickens. Your kids will love them. And I was like, chickens, huh? So my wife was like, yeah, chickens, let's get those eggs. And I saw it as this huge like DIY project. So I read all these websites about like how to build a chicken coop, what's the best chicken coop to do. And I was really into reusing completely recycled wood. So for the most part, there's some bought wood, but for the most part, my 2 chicken coops that I have are completely made with scavenged wood from either urban ore or made out of pallets. I have a tendency to do these kind of elaborate projects because I'm a school teacher and I have the summer off. So I got really into making mosaics, and there's a bunch of them around my garden, and they too are DIY because they're broken. That's the nature of a mosaic, it's broken tile. Is that I went and scavenged in dumpsters at tile places, broken tile, and I read and watched things about how to do mosaics, and I made mosaics. So when I bought this house, I knew that one family had lived here for a really long time. And a man showed up at my door, and he knocked on the door, and he introduced himself, and he said, "Oh, my name's Ron Willis, and I just want to tell you that this was my grandmother's house. And I lived here when I was a little boy, and I just want to say that my grandmother lived in this house for 65 years, and she would have loved what you have done with her house," which was like the greatest compliment in the world to me. And I said, "Oh, that's so interesting." And he said, "Well, I have pictures of my grandmother, you know, in my life as a little boy living in this house. I'll get them and I'll bring out them and I'll show them to you." And I was like, "Oh, that'd be great." So he brought me down these pictures of his grandmother. Her name was Mrs. Queen. And when I was looking at these pictures, I noticed that she and her mother, who had moved here from South Carolina, they were farming the backyard. They had water spouts, they were growing chestnuts, and they had trees, and they were farming the backyard. And I thought to myself, I was talking to my wife, and we were like, wait a minute, why aren't we farming the backyard? Now, definitely they knew a lot more about farming than I did, but we got into this idea, like, if we're living in California, then we should be growing things in our backyard that we eat. Like, we eat these lemons. I'm growing fava beans there. We're gonna eat fresh fava beans. I, rotate my crops. I eat fresh eggs all the time. I grow my own rosemary. I grow my own bay leaves. And that's another step towards having a more authentic local diet. So here is a major change that happened, which is we had solar panels installed on the top of our house. And that took about 5 years before they could get solar panels that were lightweight enough to have my bungalow have them up there. So that, I was kind of waiting for that to happen, and now that's up there. So we've had solar panels for like 2 years, and that was like all these steps, like you had to do this before you did that, and that was another reason why I went towards electrification. So the main thing that happened with the mini split was that I installed a bigger panel on my house. I had a really tiny little panel when I first bought the house, then I got a medium, and this hopefully is the bad boy that I'm never going to have to replace. And I needed that because I needed to have my kitchen on dedicated circuits, and the mini pump had to have dedicated circuits. But then we also took the biggest plunge, was we bought an electric car. So here's my electric car. I love it. My son drives it mostly. And this is called a juice box. And the juice box is, instead of going to the gas station, you just plug in your electric car here, and a considerable amount of the electricity that goes into this car is coming from that roof. And that's it. Well, thanks for coming over to see me, and I just want to say that all the projects that I've done in getting myself off of petrochemicals and onto electrification and solar energy has been really exciting and really fun, and I'm really glad to be able to do this in my own little way, in my own personal life. I still have a couple other things that I might do in the future, and one would be for me to change my cooking devices induction convection range, and then who knows, maybe there's something else out there in the future that I can think of. So thanks a lot.
Okay, so that was my buddy Ellen. Ellen, are you on? Can you unmute yourself? And there you are. Hi, friend. I can't hear you still. Unmute. Are you there now? Now can I hear you? For some reason, you remain still muted. So while you're figuring that out, I'm going to go ahead and let everyone know that since this
Amy, can you hear me now?
Oh, there you are.
I'm sorry, I had an earphone in. That's what was happening.
Oh, that's okay. So one thing that I wanted to queue up for you is that since this video was made, you have done even more work. So tell us about the last couple of things that you just did this past month.
Yeah, so I finally, on Friday, I kicked that fossil fuel to the curb. And what we did was we got a induction range with a convection oven. My wife wanted to show you her beautiful loaf of bread that she baked in her new oven this morning.
I can smell it from here.
It's awesome. I can't wait to eat it. And we got an electric water heater. So now we've completed the whole process of electrifying our house.
That's terrific. So one thing that I wanted to ask you too, before we go to Rebecca for a question from the attendees is,
Sure.
When you first got solar, you did what I did, which is that you got a lease. You leased
Yes.
your system and you got a zero money down lease. So you
Yes.
spent $0 to get a solar array. And
Yes.
then, and so as you've moved more and more appliances onto electrical and then got an EV, you've needed more electricity. And so did you call back to your solar company to say, hey, I need
Yeah, I did. A lot of people want to buy their solar panels. And I just want to make this point is one, I didn't want to have $15,000 to chunk over to solar panels at this point in my life, because I have 2 kids to send to college and I was interested in paying my house off. So leasing my solar panels, I think, was the best for me, because I think technology changes a lot. And basically those solar panels up there belong to a company. And if they break, they're going to come back and fix them, because they have their system. Basically, they're like tenants on my roof. And that's why I didn't want to purchase into owning my panels. That's a personal decision. So one thing that I did find out is I am adding additional solar panels, and I'm also getting a battery pack that is also available to rent now. And it's not going to be able to fully run my house, but my wife is a journalist and she works with people on the East Coast. And we want the ability for her still to have Wi-Fi if the fires or whatever shut down the energy system here. So I'm getting all those things through a new additional lease through the same company.
That's really good to know, because a lot of people think that things like house batteries are out of reach for them.
No.
And so it's good to know that these are now available for leasing, just like solar panels are.
Yeah, the company is called Sunrun, and the other people just mentioned it because, a lot of solar companies want to go for these like big homes out, that use air conditioning and everything. And they're like, oh, your energy bills are too small. Well, forget that. Sunrun has always worked with Berkeley people, because we don't have these huge air conditioning systems that run up our bills, but we can have solar and we can have electrification also.
Yeah. So now let's take Rebecca, you want to pop on and have a question from the audience?
Sure. Again, so many questions, Ellen, for you. So if you have time after, please
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead, ask me.
Great. I'm just also, since you just mentioned Sunrun, for folks who are living in Alameda County and our EVCE customers, I just want to mention that there is a special relationship with EVCE and Sunrun called the Resilient Home Program that provides some discounts for that solar and storage. I just threw that into the chat. But let me get back to one question here. Folks want to know more about your gray water system. So the question is, how does it work with your washer? Does the water go into the ground in your yard?
Yes, it's very low tech. As you can see, I'm quite the DIYer, And so what I did originally, I put it into a barrel of water, but then you have to worry about like the barrel being stagnant. And then I was talking to another friend of mine, and he was like, Ellen, you know, the pump on your washer, like you just hook up a hose to the hose. And then I just had a hose that just didn't have an end on it. And I cut it, you know, I had like a big run of it. And the pump that, you know, when they're spinning out that water, it just shoots out the hose. And then I just walk around and like put it under a tree. And then I put it under another tree.
Hey, I just wanted to mention that this is not the way you're supposed to do gray water, but this is the way Ellen does it.
I know.
I
Yes.
just wanted to, usually they are kind of piped under the ground into like little things that are kind of under the ground, that I'm forgetting the terminology for them. But I just wanted to say that at the eastbaygreenhome.com website, in the resources, there's the gray water action link that has plans that can teach you exactly how you need to do it.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, you know, I'm a maverick. What can I say? Amy did not tell me to do my gray water.
I'll let folks know. I also just threw in a link from the city of Berkeley. Laundry to landscape does not need a permit. It's a do-it-yourself project, very inexpensive. You can get a kit. But if you do anything other than your washer, so if you do your shower, for example, that is a whole permitted system. So again, I'll throw that link in and folks can learn the difference between a simple, what they call laundry to landscape versus a more complicated gray water system that you do need a permit.
Yeah, mine is only my wash water.
Right.
And but it has made your plants grow like insane. So anyway, I didn't mean to like put a check.
That's okay. That's all right.
I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
that people know that the way you're doing it is a little different.
Great. Again, there are tons of questions for you.
Well, ask me a couple more.
Well, how are we doing on time, Amy?
We should probably roll on. So Ellen,
Okay.
I feel like I didn't leave enough time for these Q&As, but Ellen is going to be active in the chat, answering people's questions. And again, there's that Google link to that Google form where you can type in a question that I'll send it to her after this event so that she can get back in touch with folks with answers. So.
Amy, one quick clarification before you go on, though. There was some confusion, Ellen, you're mentioning induction, convection, this and that. And I know we'll get more into induction cooking, but basically, when people talk about a range, that is a combination of what we call a cooktop and the oven part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a range is the same thing as a stove.
Yeah, that's what I'm from Pennsylvania. We call it a stove. I got a new stove.
Got a new stove. So that's the combination versus a separate cooktop, which is just what are we in for electric are called hobs, and the gas would be burners because you can get burnt on them. All right. Thanks so much, Ellen, and Amy will let you keep rolling.
Okay. So the next video is we're going to tour an ADU, and an ADU stands for an accessory dwelling unit, which is a small building on the back lot of a larger primary residence. In recent years, there's been a big push in California to reduce barriers to ADU constructions as a strategy to add more housing. And it has worked. Between 2018 and 2019, ADU construction tripled. One of our event sponsors, Blue Rock Homes, specializes in ADU construction. So be sure to check them out if you're thinking about converting that old garage into a living space. The ADU you're about to see, though, is located in North Berkeley, and it's owned by Susan, a therapist, and Brian, a graphic designer. And the ADU was designed by Kate Ledger of Ledger Wannacelia Architecture. And Kate sits on Berkeley's Energy Commission, and she'll also be part of the extended Q&A on next Sunday's tour, because next Sunday there'll be an extended Q&A with a few experts that I've selected. So if we had mentioned that that's another way for you to come and ask burning questions. So let's go ahead and look at Susan and Brian's ADU. There we go.
Hi, welcome to our ADU designed by Kate Ledger.
Favorite things. I'm always impressed how when people come into the Mahal for the first time, they can't believe, the first question is how many square feet is it? And when you tell them, well, it's like 240 or 280, they can't believe it. The volume and the way it's apportioned is really amazing. And the sense of both expansiveness and being kind of cozy at the same time is really, it never gets old. We really enjoy that a great deal.
I have to say that the amount of light, that architectural detail of the seamless glass in the kitchen and the kitchenette is such a beautiful architectural detail that I love, and the use of sliding glass doors as windows, that too was brilliant, because I can sit on them and climb out, and it just really brings the outside in. So, and to echo what Brian said, the balance of prospect and refuge is done so beautifully. So we adore Kate and her work.
And also finally the way that it's constructed, the 6-inch walls and the blow-in insulation, the temperature in there is really very pleasant all year round. It's very modulated, and I think that's a testament to the passive solar design of it. So it doesn't really require all that much heat, really, or ventilation for that matter.
And the fan helps.
And the fans definitely help.
Hi, I'm Kate Ledger, and I worked on this project as the designer. And I'm going to start off by talking conceptually about how we approach our work. I've been a green architect really since I started doing architecture in '91, and I think our first and primary focus is on climate change issues and trying to minimize our climate impacts of buildings. And then it's about resource efficiency, trying to minimize the resource depletion. And then it's about toxicity, minimizing toxicity. So looking at the climate issues, we're really trying to make the building as energy efficient as possible. And then whatever energy loads we do have, to electrify them and then receive that electricity from renewable sources. So this building is very, very energy efficient. We used big windows to the south to get heat for the building and also light. We insulated it really well. And then we have thermal mass for the floor, which holds the heat at nighttime, so it stays evenly warm. And in the summer, when it's hot outside, it also stays fairly cool in here as well. So it's a nice passively heated and cooled space. So it has very, very minimal heat loads, and those heat loads are met with just simple electric resistance heaters. We didn't need a heat pump because the heating loads are so small. So we have an electric resistance heater here, and then we have a little toe kick heater in the kitchen. So I showed you the radiator, and this is the little toe kick heater, and it's got a fan in there, so it blows the heat and it goes into the bathroom as well. So it heats both the kitchen and the bathroom. So for in order to help with the heat in the summer, we have the big ass ceiling fan here, and that actually, when it's working, I think it drops the perceived temperature by 5 or 10 degrees in the space. So any residual heat that makes it in here in the summertime, which is not much because of the good insulation in the building, the temperature is brought down with the fan. Another feature the building has are a little mini heat recovery ventilation system, and there's a little ventilation there, and then there's another one on the other side of the building, on the other end, and it has this little fan that just is slowly drawing air out while the other one is drawing air in, and then every 10 minutes it changes, and it has a filter so that it cleans the air that's coming into the space. And that's important when you make a building that has is well sealed, like this one. You need to have air coming through. So the last component of the kind of the energy systems of the house would be the wood burning stove. And this is just a very, very efficient wood burning stove. It's a Kimberly, and it's super small. And what's amazing about it is that it's like 5 times or 3 times more energy producing than this space even needs. So it heats up the space really, really fast, and needs chunks of wood that are, I don't know, they're teeny tiny, like, you know, like this size. But it's you know, it's more of an ambiance component of the energy system as opposed to being a necessary piece. So the second aspect that we focus on in our work is resource efficiency and trying to minimize resource depletion. And one of the most important things we can do is to build small. And this is a very small living space. It's 440 square feet if you include the garage portion or the shop portion. And the way we do that is we really think long and hard about the layout so that it is it's efficient in its use of space. And so we have a little kitchen, we have a little bathroom. The living room space works well both for living and for other aspects of life, you know, working out or having dinner or whatnot. And then we try and use materials efficiently. Brian talked about the windowsill, which is reclaimed wood. There's a lot of reclaimed wood throughout the project. We try and use materials that are recycled. For example, all the insulation is blown in cellulose, which is just shredded phone books and newspapers and boxes. So the last thing that we focus on is toxicity and trying to minimize the toxins in the building. For example, avoiding foam plastic insulation and using materials that, you know, finishes that don't off-gas a lot. So for here, I think I mentioned before that we use blown-in cellulose insulation in the walls, and we did that in all the walls and the ceiling, and then under the slab, the concrete slab, we used rigid mineral wool. For toxicity, I wanted to mention that one of our favorite resources for building is Healthy Building Network. They have a resource guide called Home Free, which they developed to work with affordable housing communities. And so they have a lot of really great information about how to make your house as safe as possible.
So when I think about why it's important to me to green our home, I think about my complicated feelings about owning property on native lands, specifically Ohlone. I start there, and then I think about Steve and Susanna, the former owners who live off the grid in Vermont. And Steve writes and works with Helen and Norberg Hodge on their project called Local Futures. Actually, I even dreamt of Wendell Berry, the agroecologist, poet, farmer, the night before I met them. And the next day they said they knew him. And then Steve waxed poetic on the amazing patch of biodiversity that is our backyard grass. So Steve and Susanna are in the mix for me. And then lastly, I think just guided by my love of nature, my hippie values, my deep concern for climate instability, and my desire to just leave a small footprint.
Okay, that was an extremely beautiful ADU, and it was really fun for us to visit. Brian and Susan and Kate, are you here? And can you hop on for some questions? I see Kate.
Yes.
Brian and Susan, are you here as well?
We're here, but my video isn't going on.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear your voice. So I'm going to ask the first question, and then I'll hand it over. Oh, there you guys are. So I'm going to ask the first question, which is, one thing that's really unusual about the ADU is that you actually saved wood from the old garage that you tore down and you used it in new construction. Right now, the price of virgin lumber is through the roof. And so reusing wood is always a good idea, but it's especially a good idea now. And so tell us about the process of like, did you know that you were going to use that lumber? Was it, like, what was the process of knowing that you were going to do that?
Well, the inside of the garage was unfinished, so I was always seeing, for 20 years, I saw the backside of the wood. And I was always like, I have a fetish about, I can't throw away wood. It's really difficult for me. And so there were I had a lot of time to think about reusing that wood and how I would do it. And it made sense. We didn't have enough to clad the whole building with it. So that's why we sort of had a mix of the wood and the sheet metal. And actually there's a stucco wall that you don't ever see in the tour. But so there was a lot of forethought about it, but I also knew that a contractor wouldn't want to do that. I had to do it myself.
So did you do the demolition yourself?
Yeah, I ground off all of the nail heads and then very carefully lifted the boards off of the studding. I think it's Doug fir, the siding, and then I picked a number of jambs for the garage door and studs for the framing that I was going to eventually resurface, plane down. In some cases, I laminated them together to make wider pieces. And
wow, okay, so that was quite a process for you. It was
yeah, so no contractor would ever touch that because it would be so open-ended and I didn't have a bunch of stationary machine tools in it, but I did a lot of milling actually by hand. So
wow.
it was labor intensive.
Yeah, labor of love.
Yeah.
So I know that Kate, I've learned a lot from you, but I know that one of your specialties is kind of thinking about materials and and from the toxicity angle. So you were really intentional about what you chose for insulation. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the insulation in this project is blown-in cellulose, and for the most part, and it is made from shredded newspaper and phone books. And underneath the slab is rigid mineral wool, which I think we mentioned in the video. And one of the big challenges with insulation is keeping it green, I guess. There's a lot of foam plastic insulation out there that it's very good in terms of energy performance, but it has some drawbacks environmentally. And in some cases, it's hard to not use it because of the costs, but those costs come with a lot of environmental externalities. Those costs are essentially put onto the environment, and is how I would say it, or the health of the environment. So with blown-in cellulose, it's recycled, it's low toxic, has a very low carbon footprint. It's because it's recycled. And with this house, what we did is we did the 2x6 wall framing and then the blown-in cellulose insulation, which makes it, instead of using the bats, like fiberglass bat, it blocks air infiltration better than like the bat. And we didn't need to do like foam rigid insulation on the outside of the building. And so this is a much cheaper way of making a well-insulated wall. If you want more information about low toxic construction, I mentioned in the video the home free specification put out by Healthy Building Network. I'll put that in the chat in a minute.
Yeah, and that's also on the eastbaygreenhome.com website. In the resources section, I put that as a link. Yeah. So Rebecca, tell me some questions for these folks.
Sure. Well, again, lots of questions. If you have time, stick around to please go back into the chat and Q&A. And to remind folks, if your question does not get answered, once again, we'll drop the link to put it into the Google form. But just to follow up, Kate, on the insulation, we've got someone wondering, if you use cellulose, do you need to replace it at some time during the life of the structure? Or be replenished at any time?
The short answer is no. I mean, no. You don't. It's not like it's going to deteriorate any faster than anything else in the building. If you have a leak and it gets rotten the way a wood beam would get rotten, then you may have to replace it the way you would a wood beam. But hopefully you don't have leaks in your building, because they cause problems no matter what kind of insulation you have. You're going to end up having mold problems. The thing about cellulose also is does meet all of the fire code requirements of the building code, and it has a component added, a borate, sorry, like trying to remember the words, that improves its fire performance, and it also makes it less palatable for mold and insects and stuff like that. So it's very, very low toxic compared to other fire retardants that are used in other insulations.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks so much, Kate. So I'm going to drop the link for the Google form. I see that folks are asking questions in both the chat and the Q&A. Just to let you know, we may not be able to get to your questions. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. Chat is more just for side conversations. But please, if you want something answered after the event, drop it into that form. Thank you so much. Folks are really loving your ADU.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And let's see if Amy's back on.
I am.
All right. I know we're running a few minutes behind, Amy. So
yeah. Thank you, Brian, Susan, and Kate. And it would be great if you guys could be active in the chat to see if just, to linger a little bit, because I'm sure there's tons of questions still. All right, just let me go back to the slides again.
Yeah, I think I'm up, Amy, right? I think we have our expert talk next. So again, like you said, Amy, thank you, Brian, Susan, Kate, beautiful home. I'm seeing all the comments that I'm also agreeing with. And I do want to reiterate that one of our sponsors, Blue Rock Home, builds all electric ADUs. And they also do energy audits and insulation, which we highly recommend. So definitely check out Blue Rock Home on our sponsors page on the East Bay Green Home Tours website. The link will be, if it's probably already dropped in the chat, definitely check that out and you can learn more. And like I said, now we've come to the part in today's program where we'll hear a short presentation from an expert. Until very recently, no one gave a second thought to the fact that one of our most common kitchen appliances, the gas stove, burns fossil fuel inside of our home. And we are all breathing the products of that combustion, which we've already seen tons of questions and comments about that today in the chat. And if you think about it, all of the other gas-powered appliances in our home have very strict regulations to vent to the outside, so we don't die of carbon monoxide poisoning, but not our kitchen stoves. So it really makes you kind of think about that. So it's my pleasure to introduce Brady Seals, manager of RMI's Carbon-Free Building Program. For over a decade, Brady has been focusing on how people can cook this basic human activity in a way that doesn't harm their health. With RMI, she is working with policymakers, NGOs, and other stakeholders to tackle a major piece of the US greenhouse gas emissions puzzle. Direct emissions from buildings, as we know, is a big issue. Brady's experience and expertise is situated at the intersection of air quality, buildings, and human health. She has become the go-to person about what's really going on in your kitchen when you fire up the old Wedgwood stove, as we heard folks talk about earlier. So welcome, Brady, and thank you so much for being here. Give us just a moment to get adjusted and get your slides up.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. And as someone who's based in Boulder, Colorado, it's so nice to see these beautiful places virtually in California. I think I'm supposed to share my screen, so tell me if that's wrong, but I will plan to bring up my slides real quick. Hopefully you can see these.
Yep, looks great.
Excellent. Well, I just have a few minutes and I don't want to overwhelm you with data, but I would love to give you the top hits of your kitchen and the source of bad indoor air quality. And the good news that we can really address and make our kitchen a very healthy kitchen. And so that was a fabulous introduction. Thank you for that. And so without further ado, for those of you who don't know RMI, we are a nonprofit organization that's based solely on the energy transition. So we have a lot of offices in Colorado, but we have a strong and growing office in Oakland. And in fact, most of my work over the last year and a half since I've been at RMI has been centered in California. So I want to talk for the next few minutes on our homes and more specifically our kitchens and how these impact climate, indoor air pollution, outdoor air pollution, and then equity and justice. So first, climate. So RMI really is a climate organization focused on the energy transition. And one of our biggest programs is on buildings, carbon-free buildings. And the reason is that buildings are an overlooked source of climate pollution. So burning fossil fuels in our buildings, 70 million buildings in the US still burn fossil fuels. That equates to about 10% of our US greenhouse gas emissions. So this is sometimes quite shocking, even when we talk to policymakers, that buildings have this outsized impact on our climate. And when we break that down, when we talk about buildings, it really comes down to space heating, water heating, and cooking. So residential and commercial, I think this is a good slide to give you a sense of what are we talking about when we talk about the outdoor emissions. And our space heating and our water heating are vented outdoors. Our cooking, shockingly, the one appliance we stand in front of is not required actually to be vented outdoors in every state. And so although the cooking has a smaller climate impact, it has an outsized health impact. And I sort of go by the mantra of if it's bad for the climate, it's probably bad for your health. So just to dive right in on the indoor air pollution, you know, we spend almost all of our time in buildings. Before the pandemic, before quarantining, I love this statistic that someone told me, which is that we spend more time in our buildings than some whales spend underwater. So whales are coming up for air more often than we leave our buildings. This is a very human issue. And if you go to the EPA website, they'll say right there, ironically, our indoor environments are more polluted than our outdoor environments as much as 100 times. And a major source of this pollution is the gas stove. Again, it's a combustion device indoors that's oftentimes not vented or has inadequate ventilation. And again, the EPA is saying that homes with gas stoves have 50 to 400% higher nitrogen dioxide emissions than homes with electric stoves. We've focused a lot on nitrogen dioxide because it is one of the pollutants. It's odorless, you can't see it, you can't smell it. It's a precursor to a lot of other bad things like ozone outside, but it has some growing human health concerns. So around the country, about 35%, so 1 in 3 people cook with gas. But in some states like California, that number can be much higher. So in California, it's 70%. So 3 out of every 4 stoves are gas. What we did at RMI is we partnered with Mothers Out Front, Physicians for Social Responsibility, and Sierra Club because we were looking into the climate impacts of burning gas in buildings, but the more people that we talked to said, hey, there's also this big health piece. If you hadn't heard about this before, don't worry, neither did I, and I am a cook stove person. I've been working on cook stoves around the world for the last 12 years, and many places where gas is clean, thinking it's clean because it's cleaner than coal, is cleaner than wood, and it's cleaner than charcoal. But gas has a number of health concerns. So what we wanted to do was look at all this research. What is out there? What does the evidence say? What do the facts say? So we published this report. It's about 10 pages of text and about 30 pages of citations. I'll drop the link in afterwards, but here are some of the takeaways. Indoor NO2, nitrogen dioxide, is a lot higher, and that's coming from the gas stove. We don't have any standards or guidelines in the US for indoor air quality and for NO2 in particular. So the best we have is these outdoor benchmarks. And we know that baking a cake in a gas oven could hit really high peak levels of NO2 that would essentially be illegal outdoors. The health impacts of NO2, we've been learning more about this. The strongest evidence is for respiratory impacts, particularly asthma and particularly in children. So there's a number of other things like changed lung function, cardiovascular effects that we're learning about, and this evidence has been strengthening. But the asthma is the key one. So if you remember any statistic that I throw at you in this talk, I hope it's this one, which is that a meta-analysis, which means that they looked at all of the studies. There's about 50 years of health research about gas stoves, and they said, taken together, what are the studies telling us if we look at these? And what they found is that there is a 42% increased risk of experiencing asthma symptoms for children who live in a home with a gas stove versus children who live in a home with an electric stove. And that's a 24% increased risk of being diagnosed with asthma by a doctor. Children are a very susceptible group to air pollution. They breathe sometimes twice as much as us. For anyone who's at home during quarantine with children, they know there's more physical activity. And also kids' lungs and immune systems are developing until they're 6 or so. So there's a really good reason why we want to help protect our children and make sure they're breathing the cleanest air possible. Also, asthma is the #1 chronic disease in children. So in California, more than 1 in 7 children have an asthma diagnosis, but it's also very localized. So in some California counties, it's 1 in 4 children have asthma, and you can kind of see where the prevalence is higher. The good news is that there's a lot that we can do. So the 2 main buckets of things we can do are we can reduce our exposure, and then we can eliminate our exposure to some of these gas stove pollutants. So gas stoves are a known asthma trigger, although they're not out, it's not fully out there. We're trying to raise awareness about this issue. But I always like to say that there are some free and cheap things you could like you could do this right away, which is if you have a range hood, to use it. Lawrence Berkeley National Lab has done a lot of work on this and found that sometimes 2 in 10 people use their range hoods. And part of that, the #1 reason is people don't think that they're needed. Other reasons are noisy, things like that. So if you have your exhaust hood, you can use it more often. And it's actually a lot better if you cook on the back burners, because often the range hood doesn't reach as far to cover the front burners. You can also open a window while you're cooking, and really just trying to get more ventilation if you don't have it. I myself, I have an electric stove, but I have a recirculating range hood where it pulls above the microwave and recirculates it back. So opening up a window and doing some of these things is a great way to reduce exposure. Sort of the next step would be to try out a portable induction cooktop like we saw in Susan and Brian's ADU, just plugged in there. Many of us at RMI have been using these since we've been looking into this research, and you can find some online for $50, $70. You can also look at other electric appliances like a toaster oven or kettles and try to displace some of the gas cooking. And then if you're able, when your gas stove dies, switching to an electric or electric induction cook stove. And I know Chef Rochelle's coming. I love Chef Rochelle. I got the chance to cook with her in Oakland last year, so I won't go too much into induction, but I know you're in for a real treat. Really quickly wanted to talk about all these other gas appliances and what's it doing to climate and health. So it's really our furnace, water heater, our clothes dryer. Last May, we partnered with Harvard School of Public Health to look at what's happened outdoors now that coal plants have been closing, what's been happening to our buildings. And what we found is that buildings have been taking on an increasingly important share of air pollution. So we've developed this interactive map, and I'll drop the link in afterwards, but you can click on your state and you can see what is the human health toll of essentially burning things in buildings. And I will note that this includes wood, everything else. So anything that burns, so gas, wood, oil, biomass. We have it broken down by fossil fuels as well, but there's right now a strong health case for moving to all electric, moving away from burning things that's often not talked about. And I did want to highlight that another study last year in UCLA actually found that San Francisco Bay Area would see the most health benefits from all California from switching to all electric appliances. So this is not including the stove because of the ventilation, but if all homes in San Francisco Bay Area went electric, we would see huge air quality savings, which would be a lot of saved health costs. And so right now we essentially assume that the cost of burning things is zero, but when we count up some of these health costs, I mean, this is in the billions. And I think that these are underestimates because we're only looking at particulate matter here and not some of the other pollutants. But there's a real health and climate case to be made for electrifying our buildings. And finally, I just wanted to touch on equity and justice because unfortunately, we don't all breathe the same air, and there are a number of factors that make lower income households more susceptible to exposure to gas stove pollution. And so again, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, who's done probably the most on kitchens and studying this, some of their latest work is showing that really the smaller the unit size, the higher these concentrations, particularly that nitrogen dioxide. So small units, lots of people in units, older homes, is really a reason why we see these higher concentrations and higher exposure. Another piece is using the stove or the oven for supplemental heat. So opening up that oven door when it gets cold. And we do know that this happens in California. It's not only the Chicagos and the New Yorks of the world. And so this is a serious health equity and environmental justice issue. And then finally, again, the asthma, going back to some of these, we know that people of color are more affected by asthma, have a greater asthma burden. And so that's one of the main things that makes you more susceptible to this air pollution from the gas stoves, which is already having asthma. And so one of the things that we do when we talk to policymakers is how can we make sure that we are promoting policies that put environmental justice and frontline communities first, because they're the most burdened, but also this is where we could see some of the most benefits. And just on RMI's policy side, it's pretty simple. We have two. One is we should be building all new, all electric. There's really a good health and climate case not to put in fossil fuels. And in California, you guys are clearly leading the way with 45 cities and communities committing to all electric. And then two, which is the harder thing, is how do we retrofit these 70 million buildings? I mentioned earlier that 35% of the country is still burning gas in their stove. And so that's about 43 million stoves. So we have some work to do. Like I said, if you hadn't heard about this, neither had I. We are trying not to scare anyone, but we do feel that people don't have the health information that they need. I will drop some things into the chat. We had the opportunity to be featured on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, which is a late night comedy TV show. And when I looked to get the link for you guys, I saw it's been viewed over 400,000 times, which is pretty crazy. And so I just want to thank you. Thanks to Amy and everyone for inviting me here. I'm happy to take some questions and really enjoyed talking about my favorite subject, which is cook stoves, and look forward to getting to some of your questions.
So Brady, thank you so much for that. It's I'm glad that you mentioned the Samantha Bee bit, because I watched it and it was really cute, really funny, and like a lighthearted way to get across something that's kind of a heavy topic. Because I think that once people realize their indoor air quality in their kitchen is so poor, it's kind of a visceral hit. And it was for me because both my husband and my son have asthma. And so that was a big motivating force for me to switch out my gas stove when it died, and to get an induction range that I love so much. I wanted to give a little hat tip to the Building Decarbonization Coalition, which is one of the sponsors of this event. And it's through the Building Decarbonization Coalition that I first heard Brady speak at a webinar. And they are a fantastic resource for cities, utilities, and organizations that are focused on transitioning buildings off of fossil fuels. And I also am glad that you did called out Chef Rochelle, because it's also through the Building Decarbonization Coalition that I met and learned of Chef Rochelle, who's going to be doing the induction cooking demonstration later on, after we see the next 3 homes. So Brady, if you would, it's probably, I'm just doing a time check, so it's probably best for you to jump into the chat and answer people's questions that way in a lingering manner, so that I can go on to the next home video. But thank you so much for piping in from Colorado. So now we're going to turn to the home tour of Dania Shorter, who's on the team today. And she's not only helping us produce this event, but she also lives in a beautiful, light-filled, all-electric apartment in West Oakland. And a few things that I want to draw your attention to: traffic is the largest contributor to poor air quality. And Dania's West Oakland proximity to freeways and the port means that she and her neighbors are dealing with air pollution. Even when it's not wildfire season, the air quality can get pretty poor around there. But Dania's apartment is an oasis of clean indoor air. And so now we're going to roll the video.
Hello everyone, my name is Dania Shorter and I live here at Station House Condos. These were some of the Bay Area, or at least Oakland's, first all-electric multifamily developments. Moved here about 9-10 months ago. Still getting the feel for everything, but I'd love to show you around. Let's check it out. Living here has definitely been a learning experience, but more than anything, it's really inspired me to think more deeply about my being able to purchase a home in the future, especially living here as a renter. You know, I was afforded this experience to be able to learn how to live in an all-electric home, and definitely how to reap the benefits, especially regarding health, indoor air quality that disproportionately impacts my community. So being able to experience living here, having my family and friends over to experience and learn more about what living in an all-electric home looks like. Definitely wanting to purchase an EV vehicle in the future and seeing how that connects to my household, and definitely my work at the Ecology Center and with the City of Berkeley around electrification has really just exposed me to a wealth of knowledge and information about how beneficial to both my community and my health of my family is important in being able to live in an all-electric home. So here we have the water heater, and outside of a traditional water heater, this actually is a heat pump water heater. So at this top here, you can see the heat pump, and if you put your hand here, you can actually feel the cool air. So that's why they're usually in garages or basements, because they're taking the heat and cooling out the water that's held there. So this is the solar system that's connected to the solar panels that are on the roof. This is a 3-story building. And so we're renting, so we don't access the solar panels, but all of this is connected and makes it super energy efficient. And then here, I just noticed that is actually to be able to plug in an electric vehicle. So a little incentive for my next car purchase to maybe be an EV. So here we are in the kitchen, tons of electric, super energy efficient appliances, including this induction stove, which is a Bosch induction stove. So we're here in the kitchen. One of the biggest learning curves in this all-electric home has been learning to cook on an induction stove. My sister and I traditionally come from a background of a lot of using gas appliances. My family owns a restaurant, my brother is a chef. So cooking on gas is how we kind of came up. So we learned that a lot of our pots and pans, some of them worked, some of them didn't. We had to do the kind of magnet test and figured out that some of the existing pots and pans we had worked on this induction cooktop, and some of them we ended up having to purchase some new items. So that's been an experience. We've also learned the differences in how we cook certain dishes. The oil heats up differently. My brother's a chef and he enjoys cooking on this induction cooktop because he says it's a lot more efficient with some of his dishes. Oil heats up quicker, and he's just able to bring the dishes to life a little bit better. So lots of new experiences here with the induction cooktop. So while there's been a learning curve in learning to cook on the induction stove, it's been really cool to learn. I've been involved at the Ecology Center. I'm the Community Engagement Program Director at the Ecology Center. We've been supporting in this last year Berkeley's existing building electrification project and a lot of other local initiatives to electrify Berkeley's buildings, homes, household, residential, multifamily. So learning alongside of having this experience at home has been interesting. But more than anything, definitely learning about the benefits of electrifying your home and using, for example, an induction stove over gas. Specifically from my community as a Black African American person, we are disproportionately impacted by indoor air quality. You can't see now, but outside we live really close to Highway 880, and we're already impacted by those emissions coming off of the highway. So inside really matters as far as our health. So being able to cook on an induction cooktop, eliminate the natural gas and those emissions inside the home is really important to improve our indoor air quality. So in addition to learning to cook, we also know that we are getting the benefits for our health, which is really, really important. So you can see here the vents connected to our electric heating and cooling system. So it keeps us cool in the summers and warm in the winters, and specifically really filters out the air, which is really important for indoor air quality. We really came in handy last summer during the smoky wildfire season to make sure that we are breathing in clean air inside of our home. And here on the second level, we have the electric washer and dryer here. So here we are on the third level, and this is our Nest. So this is connected to our air and heating. It's digital, connects to our phone, which is super convenient. So you can do heating, cooling here, set reminders, different kind of alerts. And then on the app, actually, you can set up notifications where it can alert you if anything is going wrong with the system to let you know you need to get it checked out by a professional. It's basically letting you know it's not being efficient and saving energy like it should be. We also get reminders to change our air filters to make sure that we're continuously circulating clean air indoors. And then has some other cool features that we like to use, such as turning the heating on right before we get home so that the house is heated up in the winter, or turning the cooling on before we get home in the summers, just from our phone. So that's a pretty cool electric digital feature of this home. Thank you so much for visiting and touring our home virtually. We hope you learned something and enjoyed, and green is the new black. Thank you.
Thank you, Dania. That was awesome. Thank
you.
So, not only do you live in an all-electric building, but in your professional life, you are doing a lot of outreach to community members about electrification in Berkeley. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the outreach work that you're doing with the Ecology Center, and what are you hearing back from the community? Like what appeals to people the most? What are they most reluctant about?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I mentioned a couple of those things in the video because it truly is a reality. I mentioned being the Community Engagement Program Director at the Ecology Center in Berkeley. While I live in Oakland, I'm literally engaged and providing education and information to the community at the same time that I'm learning. So it has truly been a learning experience. We've been connected with Berkeley's existing buildings electrification strategy. I recognize some names. So the draft went out few months ago and has been open for public comment, and I believe will get finalized at some point this year. And the Ecology Center, we've been involved in electrification work for a few years and beyond. I'm sure the Electrification Expo we were involved in, someone mentioned earlier, and definitely more recent efforts in transitioning off of fossil fuels for Berkeley's existing buildings. So a part of that project, the Ecology Center, we led the community outreach and engagement work that was really focused on making sure that the process, any policies that were coming forth to help the city transition its existing buildings were and will be and will continue to be inclusive, be co-convened and worked on with the community, and of course with communities in mind, specifically our BIPOC communities, our differently abled communities and unhoused communities that are most disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis, by fossil fuels and the negative impacts and adverse impacts of that, and of course low income residents and all of that. So what we've been seeing and hearing, we're also hearing right here in the chat, and that a lot of that has been addressed in the draft strategy and the next draft that will come out. And a lot of the other organizations in the community that are doing this effort is that people understand the urgency. That's been super exciting to see and hear. And people also acknowledge that this looks different for different people. I think, Brady, you mentioned the disproportionate impacts, of course, of people of color, as well as low income folks. I've seen it in the chat. People are asking questions and making comments that, you know, some people might not be able to afford, even if they're small changes. And so that all needs to be considered if there's any policy coming out around electrifying homes or mandating it at all. Our community needs to be kept in mind, and this has to be an equitable transition. And so I've been excited to be a part of on that end of making sure that our communities, especially those have traditionally been excluded in conversation like this, are included, and that voices are heard and valued, and that input is included in the next draft or whatever is happening around these electrification experts. And then also personally, I keep saying it, you know, Black communities are disproportionately impacted. That's me. That's my family. In Berkeley, we have our Berkeley Black community is disproportionately impacted by hospitalizations from asthma. You've mentioned it, Amy. So many other people have mentioned, I have asthma. I don't want my kids to have asthma, or my kids do have asthma, or we have and we don't want our kids to get it. And so that's real, and that's something that affects me personally. So renting this place, I've been able to learn a lot, and also am seeing how directly this connects to my future and being able to purchase a home one day, and understanding and having all of these resources. Again, thank you to Amy and everyone who put this together and who have offered help and resources, and who are trying to do it having not had those resources or thinking about it. And so it's just a privilege to be able to have access to this information and know where to go so that I can have that in the future.
Yeah, that's terrific. I want to see, Rebecca, can you bring some questions from the attendees? Also, I just wanted to say how cute that t-shirt was that your sister was wearing. And I also wanted to let people know that Dania designed that t-shirt, and it's part of her creative side activities.
Thank you.
Dania, thank you so much. There's been a lot of nice chatter going on about the equity issues surrounding electrification. And people are just really appreciating that you shared your story, and they love your apartment. So once again, I'm dropping in the Google form. And remember, folks, that's if your question does not get answered by the end of the event, feel free to type that in there, and we'll get back to you in a few weeks. There's a lot of questions. I'm going to combine them about induction cooking. So first, people are wondering, you know, what's this magnet test that you mentioned, and what kind of pans are going to work and which ones won't? And someone wants to know, is the cast iron, if I use a cast iron pan, they said, isn't that going to scratch that nice cooktop you have there?
Yeah, those are great questions. And I was hesitant with doing a Q&A because I'm like, I'm still learning. This is so new to me. I've been here about a year now. So I've spent a lot more time at home than I would have ever imagined with COVID. But it's I've learned that it's a misconception that people think on an induction cooktop. And I make that distinction between an electric stove. So there's a difference between an electric stove and an induction stove. Induction stoves are magnetic. And so there's a misconception that you have to buy all new cookware if you have an induction stove, and that's not necessarily true. A lot of our pots and pans still worked. I had no idea that they could have not worked. So we literally were starting to cook and nothing was happening, and we were wondering what was going on, and did some research and learned that because induction cooktops are magnetic, you literally can pull a magnet off of your refrigerator and test on the bottom of the pot. As I did in that video, that was my favorite little boiling water pot. And I've had that for years. So I was still able to use that. Our cast iron skillet, it doesn't scratch at all. I didn't notice it, but we use a special like sponge that's for the induction cooktop, so that in general it's not scratched up. We only use that specific sponge that's made for that kind of glass top. And otherwise we use what we have. We did purchase some new pots and pans, some specific sizes that we were looking for. We already had a ton of pots and pans that worked, and just did the magnet test on them to make sure we were donating some of the stuff that no longer worked.
That's great today. And in the chat, there's some nice exchange going with folks who've been cooking on induction for a long time with cast iron, and assuring participants that it is okay. But the last question I want to put out is, once again, someone wants to know where they could buy your shirt. So
thank you. Green is the new black. So my sister and I, just as a side thing, we've been on a hiatus for a couple of years now with so much going on, but we do have a t-shirt line called Onyx Light. I started it years ago, just out of my passion for the environment, for this climate and work, and for the future of this planet. And so I think the information is being dropped into the chat, but Onyx Light, you can read more about what that even means. But it started back when I used to work as a wildlife biologist with the Forest Service, and being a Black woman in the environmental field, I was feeling very much underrepresented, and was very passionate about increasing diversity in this field of environmentalism, of climate action, of natural resource management. And so I started designing shirts that kind of melded my passion for the environment, for the future of our planet, so our youth, and as well as my culture. So something that I could wear that represented basically who I am. And so for the planet, for the future, and for the culture is kind of my mantra, my personal and as well as Onyx Light. So we'll drop that information in the chat if you're interested at all. And that's kind of where that came from. And I appreciate the comments.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. I don't have it in my little cheat sheet, your link. So
it looks like someone
there it is.
dropped it wherever it came from. Thank you.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. All right. Well, Amy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dania. It's been such a pleasure to work with you, but also to see your groovy apartment, and I appreciate you bringing this really important equity piece to talk about that as well. So,
of course, thank you, Amy.
So now we're going to turn to the Berkeley Hills home of Eric Ahrens and his wife, Beth. Eric is a physicist who worked for NASA and also at UC Berkeley, and he now leads the climate team of the Berkeley-Albany League of Women Voters. Eric approached his home upgrades as a sort of game, one that started with his solar panels and then just went from there. Once you're generating your own power, there's a natural motivation to want to depend less and less on the utility company and more on your own supply. So let's get to that video.
Yeah, hi. I'm Eric Ahrens, and I've lived here since 1983. The house was built in 1932, and it was the first house in this whole neighborhood here. And then slowly other houses got built here. And I think it was the first house because this part of the hills is about the steepest in all the hills here in Berkeley. And so putting roads in here must have been difficult. So I bought the house, and then several years later, it was in 2006, I put solar cells onto the house. And I did that because I thought that would be interesting. And I knew something about electrification and global warming and all that, but it was kind of a game, and it's been an interesting game to follow all this, and because it's gotten me involved with other people and groups that have solar cells. In 2012, I got a Volt car. Again, that was something interesting. It's a really excellent car. And then 2018, I got a Tesla, so we have these 2 electric cars. And 2 years ago, I put in heat pumps, both for the air in the house, that's called space heating, and for the hot water. And then last year we put an induction stove in. Yeah, it was in 2005 that a friend of mine put solar cells onto his house, and so I copied him and put solar cells onto mine in 2006. And I picked SunPower, which is a US company, and it makes the highest efficiency solar cells. I also liked that it was a US company because I do buy American if I can, and these solar cells, they were the best in the world. Yeah, hi. Yeah, it's good that you came over because we'd like to show you our induction stove here. And so come on in and take a look.
Hi, so what I like about the induction stove is that it, especially the cooktop, it just is fast. I mean, you could boil water in seconds in a pot. So, and the evenness with the cooking is the best I've experienced thus far. The ability to just be able to shut the burner off and leave the pot on the stove and know that it's not going to cook anymore is a real plus. On this unit, there is a non-induction burner, so that makes it nice that if you cook something, you can warm it. So that's great. The ability to just clean it like any glass top is really pretty easy. The black, of course, shows more smudges than white, but I just find that we are using 3 pots to cook things now, and it's just simplified how I cook. There's just 2 of us, but it's just the ability to cook things on the cooktop much faster. The oven is the regular electric oven, and but it does have induction or the roast features and the convection roast and the convection bake, which cuts cooking time sometimes 20 minutes. This is the GE Cafe model, which is the middle to upper range model of induction stoves that GE makes. We designed our garden to be low water, many drought tolerant plants and some natives.
Yeah, so we have 2 heat pumps here. One is for the air in the house, that's called space heating, and the air handler is over here. That has a radiator in it, like a car radiator, and you make it hot in the wintertime to heat the house and cold in the summer to cool the house down. And it has a fan and blows air into these ducts here. Here's the intake air out of the house and then through these ducts into the house. And since that heats or cools the air, and the thing that does the heating and cooling is outside the house on the other end of these pipes here. We'll go out and take a look at that. Then for the hot water, we have a hot water tank here, and that also is a heat pump. And the unit outside the house, there's a thing outside the house and does the heating and heats up hot water that comes in here. And then we have this tank so that if there's a power outage, if the electricity goes out, we can keep hot water for a couple of days because the tank is quite big. Anyway, it's a sand and hot water heater that uses carbon dioxide in the compressor outside. And the carbon dioxide has the advantage that if it leaks out, and refrigerants do leak occasionally, carbon dioxide is much less infrared or heat trapping than the gases and liquids that are used for most heat pumps. This is a compressor for the heat pump to heat the air for the space heating in the house, and it's hooked up to a 220 volt outlet here, and so it can operate both as a heat pump to heat the air and as an air conditioner to cool the air in the house. This is the compressor for the Sandin heat pump. That's the hot water heat pump. Again, it's hooked into a 220 volt outlet, and it works very nicely. We've got 2 electric cars. So on the 2 cars that we have, on the Chevrolet Volt, this is the charger for it, and it plugs into a normal 120 volt outlet. Nothing special here. And for the Tesla, we plug that into a 220 volt outlet. Again, nothing special. It's a normal 220 volt outlet. And so with off 120 volt, a charger, either for the Volt or for the Tesla, if we had a Tesla charger here, it will give you 40 miles of range in 10 hours of charging. And that's sort of good for overnight charging. And this thing here, well, in 13 hours, it'll give you 300 miles. If there's a power outage, one can take electricity out of the big battery in the Volt here and run an extension cord into the house and run the refrigerator to keep food cold, or run some lights or so. So this is a 1.5 kilowatt or 1500 watt inverter, and it can be plugged into the Volt here, and then an extension cord that goes into the house can be plugged in here. And so I'll show you how it's plugged in here. So during a planned power outage, we can put the inverter in the car and hook it up here, and then run this extension cord here and run it into the house, up the stairs, up into the kitchen, to the refrigerator. So putting all these appliances in the house was a lot of fun. I did it kind of for fun and interest. And what it did, it got me to look into solar cells and to understand them well, and into electric cars and to understand them well. And I've gotten people in the neighborhood to buy these things, get them themselves. In fact, I've gotten about 20 people to buy electric cars. I got 10 sort of on my own, and the other 10 with some other people. This all got me into the Berkeley Climate Action Coalition, and so I've been able to help there and participate in discussions and in electric fares that they have for cars, electric fares for heat pumps and that kind of thing. So I've been able to explain things, and so that's given me a lot of satisfaction that I've been able to help the community this way.
Thank you, Eric and Beth. That was really great. You know, Eric, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. I'm not seeing you though. I'm hearing you, but not seeing you.
Am I in now? Yeah, I think you have me now.
Yeah, could you guys put the spotlight on Eric so that he pops into the middle frame? All right, so one of the cool things about Eric's house, you know, on the Green Home Tour, you're going to see several homes that have home batteries, which store the solar energy in a battery so that they can use it during a power outage. They could use it at night if they want. So Eric doesn't have batteries with his solar, but what he has is the ability to use his car as his electric vehicle car battery as backup during a power outage. And so I just wanted to say that there's a word for that, and that's they call it V2H charging, which is vehicle to home. And they also call it bidirectional charging. And so that's something that many people don't know about yet. And so Eric, I want you to tell us a little bit about that. And do you think that that's headed to be something that's more available?
Yes, that will become more available. The thing I had here, that the inverter that I showed, that's you have to do that on your own. You know, you have to buy that thing and run an extension cord. But some cars, and more cars in the future, electric cars with the big batteries, they will the charger to the car, it will run backwards also if there's a power outage, and so the energy in the battery can be pumped into the house to run your house. And some electric car companies are offering or will offer that now, so it doesn't have to buy a battery just for the house that stands alone for the house.
I noticed that Ford now is marketing a truck, a Ford F-150, that I think it's a hybrid, but they're marketing it as, you know, having basically a built-in battery packs for, you know, people to be able to run appliances off of their truck. So I think that, you know, in the next few years, we're going to see that a lot more of cars being able to put their charge out to either a home or to other things. So Rebecca, do we have some questions for Eric?
Hi there. Eric, oh my gosh, there are so many people that are interested in your charging.
Okay.
So you're gonna have to hop on to the chat. They want to know, you know, how long can your refrigerator run, and can it be used, you know, what about for other types of cars? So I think there's a lot of specifics. They want to know if Tesla supports this and other EVs. So if you've got time, we'd love you to hop onto the Q&A, and you'll see a load of questions there. And it's a great technology that we hope to see soon, because we know that batteries can be expensive to get battery backup for your home. So EV, being able to use your electric vehicle would really be a way to make it more economical for folks. They want to know where you plug that in, like actually where do you plug in to the inverter? And have you seen it in other cars?
Yeah, I'm not seeing this in other cars, but on the Volt, the inverter actually gets plugged into the small battery. All these electric cars have a big battery to run the car, to make it move. and then they have a small battery, like all cars have small batteries. But in the Volt, how it works here is we plug the inverter into the small battery. When it runs down, the big battery feeds into the small battery, and so you do use the big battery. What I like to say here, I'd like to ask Rebecca is, I've written some things down about cars and appliances and that kind of thing. And if I could send these to Rebecca, their text documents, if she could send those on to the participants here at this big show here, I think there's a lot more in these documents than what I could say here, or what I could answer in chat.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We can compile the resources that aren't already up on the Green Home Tour website and share those out with anyone who registered. So send them my way, Eric. You've got my email.
Yeah, and they can also, anyone who wants to send me an email, and I'll answer questions also that way.
That's great. I'm gonna put that Google form in there. If your questions were not answered, if you put them here, we will make sure your questions get to Eric, and he's offering to get back to you. Okay, it looks like Amy's back on and we're ready to keep rolling.
Thank you, Eric. It was great to check out your house and to meet Beth and thanks for participating.
Thanks for putting all this on. This is a great show.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to turn to the home tour of my longtime friend Marcos. And what I love about his home is the melding of old and new. He lives in a very vintage house with very modern interior and systems. His approach embodies both efficiency and luxury. He strives to get his energy and water footprint as tiny as possible, but then he also lives a modern life and that does not sacrifice luxury at all. Rather than a gradual approach, Marcos's home underwent a major remodel all at once. So let's check it out.
Hi, my name is Marcos, and this is my house. It's a 1906 colonial cottage. I think that's maybe what it's called. And it was built as refugee housing for victims of the earthquake in San Francisco at that time. So these houses weren't built to the best standards, none of this old-fashioned quality here on this street. So when I bought this house 3 years ago, I not only had to gut it down to the studs, but even the studs had to go. About 95% of the house was redone. And that allowed me to sort of indulge in my fascination and my obsession with all things sustainable. So everything from the appliances to the insulation to the construction methods, everything I did really was keeping sustainability in mind. And thus, I was able to build a house that really is on the cutting edge of sustainability today. All right, come on in. So as I mentioned, I was able to build this from the ground up. And the first sort of step was in making sure that the building envelope was as insulated as absolutely possible. There's no glazing, no windows on the east side of the house. There's also none on the west side over on this front part of the house, but that's because I have a twin house, as you saw from the outside shots. So the windows, everything was to standards that may have passed Passive House certification if I actually had gone through the trouble. I didn't, because I didn't need a fancy plaque. What I needed to do is I needed to see those results on my heating bill, on my electricity usage. So the entire house is electrical. There is no gas. And the entire HVAC for the house is actually this unit right here, this head unit that's connected to a heat pump outside. And this essentially heats the entire house. It's about 1,000 square feet. My bedroom, which is way in the back, as you can see, my bedroom gets a little cooler. Doesn't fully heat the bedroom. I don't care because I like it cooler. I like to sleep cool. So it actually worked out really nicely. So it's sized really well to keep the house up front, this living area, nice and comfortable. So, excuse the Girl Scout cookies, I have 2 nieces, so I stocked up to help them out. But this is my kitchen. As I mentioned, I don't have gas, so my cooking is all done on an inductive stove. And not only does it allow me to safely heat and cook meals for my family, it makes sure that nobody gets burned because it stays relatively cool. And my favorite part is after I'm done, cleaning it out is as simple as just wiping it off, and then I'm done. Hi, welcome to my room. So I start by having a all-in-one washer and dryer by LG. What's really great about this thing is that it's a heat pump dryer, so it actually does not get very hot. It means that it does not use a lot of electricity. It actually extracts moisture from the clothes, and it protects the clothes from being burnt or overly damaged by high heat. Now, the trade-off is that doing a load of laundry, the washing and drying cycle is about 5 hours. Now, for me, that's okay. I put it on in the morning. In the evening, I come back. I don't have to move clothes over. It's all done and clean, and it actually uses a fraction of what a traditional washer and dryer uses. Also, this room, there's incredible amount of insulation at the top. Basically double whatever code was. We just kept adding on it. It means that this room stays very cool and very warm in the summer. There is some east-facing glazing, but it's these really small windows up here off camera right now, but it allows some light to come in without really losing a lot of heat. And if it gets too warm in here, which is rare, I can just turn on this extremely energy efficient fan to make sure that things are nice and cool in this bedroom. So this is my backyard. This is a small Berkeley lot, and so there's not a lot of space. But what I did is I actually planted all native California plants. I think there may be, obviously the lemon is not native. There's some stuff that has survived the previous owner, but it's mostly California native plants, and it's a new garden. So it's still looking a little scraggly, and it's still early in the year. But I love the idea that once everything is established, I'm not going to have to water anymore in the summer. So that was a big factor. I really, really want to reduce my water footprint. So this is the sort of the brain of all this sort of high-tech technology in the house. I have over here, I got my air to water heat pump. It actually sends it to this whatever that thing, this tank. Tank. But notice, even, I've highly insulated every single pipe. What I actually did is I would actually move my hand around the pipes, and if I felt any kind of heat whatsoever, it meant that it was losing energy, and so I wrapped that up as tight as I could until I could no longer feel any energy loss. Over here is my air to air. It's my HVAC, my air conditioning, and my heating. It's a nice little bonus that there is air conditioning, and you think, well, why would I need air conditioning in Berkeley? Well, because nowadays when it's hot, it's also fire season, and the air is absolutely terrible. So not only did that keep my house nice and cool with the windows closed, but it actually also filtered the air from outside. So I had nice, healthy, clean air for my family and me, and it was nice and comfortable. And being a heat pump, it's incredibly energy efficient. Over here, if you back up a little bit, I have 2 Tesla batteries. These are each 12 kilowatts of storage. This is tied to my solar, which I guess we haven't talked about yet. So I have about 7 kilowatts of solar capacity, and not only does it power my house, but it charges these batteries. I'm able to have power in the case of disaster, I'm not worried about PG&E shutting off my power, but it also means that I can power the house via battery at night. And here we are in late February, and I'm already generating enough power to 100% be off grid. So the way it works is that in November, I start using grid. By the last week of February, I've stopped using grid. So about 4 months of grid. The rest of the time, I'm self-sufficient, and I'm kicking power back to the grid. So this is a great place to sort of show what I'm talking about when I talk about extra insulation on the walls. So typical wall is what, 2x6, and you got a little bit of extra siding or whatever, so maybe about 8 inches wide, 8 inches thick. This is over a foot wide, and you can sort of see that this is all one mass of insulation, and that's the entire envelope of the house, except there's a part of the house where it's too close to my neighbor, so I couldn't do that part of the house. But this actually is one of the reasons that I'm able to heat and cool the house with just a single unit upstairs. So that's really an important part of just having a nice and comfortable house. So come back here. Talk about how the ability to have solar and then the battery and get a good sense of how much capacity I have gives me the ability to actually spend, I consider about spending energy on things that I really care about. So here I actually have a sauna that's large enough for me to do hot yoga in. It's extremely energy hungry. So it uses about 4 kilowatt hours, 4 kilowatts in an hour of usage. That's a lot. At some points, that's about 20% of my entire home usage. But I know I have that capacity because I have all this excess power. So I can either sell it back to the grid or send it back to the grid, or I can use it on things that are kind of fun and interesting. And that way I'm not depriving myself. I'm not living a life of deprivation and making things miserable for myself. In order to live green and to be carbon negative, I can actually do fun stuff like my hot yoga. So I'm a metrics guy, and every aspect of this house is actually tracked. I track how much electricity I use, what appliances are using that electricity. I track my vampire power, that is the electricity that it's just background noise, like the television, how much it sucks when it's turned off. And I track my solar, I track what the battery is doing. I even track my water usage, and so I actually have a meter on my water main, so I can see how much water I'm using per day. And it tells me what appliances are using water. And not only does it let me know if there's any leaks, but it also lets me know, okay, I'm using too much water for irrigation, or I'm in a sweet spot. And gotta say, I'm pretty much usually in that sweet spot. So when you're into sustainability the way I am, there is always a what's next. And right now there's a big French drain around the house that empties into a cistern that's about 80 gallons. And there's a creek that runs in the backyard. So yeah, in the winter when it rains, the cistern sort of fills up with water, spits it out into the street, and that's okay because there's plenty of rainwater. But what happens is that in the summer, I realized last summer, it actually fills up with water from that underground creek. So what I want to do next is create a way to be able to use that water to irrigate my plants. Like I said, they're not very water intensive in the summer, so I don't need a lot of water. I may be able to take care of all my water needs by pulling from that cistern. And so that's my next project this year.
Okay, thank you, Marcos. That was really fun. Are you here? Marcos, are you here?
I am here.
Okay, looks like
it says unable to start video because you have stopped it. Okay, there we go.
There,
there we go. Hi, everybody.
So, there you are. Okay, so I really love how you geek out on the apps to see exactly where your energy and water use is. But I'm curious, like, how does the water app even work? Like, how does it know? How does it know what is happening from any given faucet or irrigation or anything like that?
So you basically have to train it, and every different appliance uses a certain amount of water for a certain amount of time, generally speaking. So if I flush my toilet is 0.8 gallons, and it refills in 32 seconds, I think is what the number is. So the app knows, okay, that's a toilet. Now it can't tell me it's the front toilet or the back toilet, right? It just knows that a toilet has flushed. Same with the showers. The shower, it's a standard gallons per minute for the shower. And it's really funny because I have a brand new Brazilian au pair, and in Brazil, apparently they take a lot of showers. It's like a thing. So the app has actually shut off the water on her a couple times. So I bet it's a good way to train her. Like, no, you can't take 30-minute showers in frickin' Berkeley. Like, that's not a thing that you can do here. Be more efficient. And she's actually learned. And it's funny because I could see in the app, I could see how long those showers are taking. And I'm able to communicate that with her and get it to a place where now, even though she's been here, I mean, she's been here like 4 months, we're almost back to the original water usage when it was just me and my daughter. And now she's here, and so we've all been adjusted. I shortened my showers a little bit to make sure that I was still under that limit, because it's important to me. Those metrics are important to me.
So speaking of metrics, you're one of the only people on this tour that, when you did this all at once renovation, that you used an energy modeler. And so I want you to tell people, what is an energy modeler and what is it like working with an energy modeler?
Yeah, so the energy modeler basically looks at the square footage, looks at the amount of glazing, the kind of glazing, which are windows, and then we'll do things like size, the kind of heat pump. For a while, I was looking at doing maybe radiant floor. And so we explored a lot of different options, what it would take to maintain temperature in my house, given the kind of glazing that I had. It was important for me to meet both LEED standards and passive house standards. I even considered getting the certification. The problem was that it was about $5,000 to get certified, and then you had to get inspected at different points. And the last thing I needed to do was have have my work crew have to stop for a day or two waiting to be inspected. It didn't make sense for the plaque. But it was sort of important to me because I do want to sort of live by example, lead by example, show what is possible. And I understand that a lot of this is out of financial reach for a lot of people, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe it can be incorporated into future building code, things like living all electrical, cutting off the gas. And so it was just like a place to experiment with a lot of technology. So what I was able to do is I knew exactly what size my heat HVAC needed to be, because I had the models telling me with this much windows, where they were facing, the kind of window, this is what you need to heat that space. And so when the HVAC people came, they recommended a unit that was twice as much. And if you know anything about HVAC heat pumps, is that if they work too hard, the efficiency goes down. There's a sweet spot that you need to hit. So if you oversize a system, you're actually less efficient. So by knowing exactly what I needed, I could say to the heating people, it's like, no, I'm good. I install basically 12K of heating. It's all I needed for my 1,000 square feet. It only runs 2 months out of the year. And because it's house and it's so enveloped, the envelope is so tight. And the other thing is, even just working with that energy modeler to pick the kind of windows. So for example, the front facing windows of my house, which is south facing, I wanted them to allow heat in. You can have kind of windows that block heat, right? That block those. I actually wanted the heat because when the sun is low in the winter, I wanted that natural heating of the house. And when the sun is hot in the summer, the sun is really high in the sky, doesn't really shine inside the house. Now, there was a trade-off though. There's a trade-off is that we know that here in Berkeley, in the Bay Area, it is hot. It can be hot September and October.
Yeah.
And in September and October, the sun is low. So for 2 months out of the year, it can get uncomfortably hot in my house. I just open up all the windows, get the fans running, or even turn on the AC. Although I really I want to be carbon negative. To me, I'm not happy unless I'm actually delivering electricity to the grid. So that was my trade-off. But it was a trade-off that I can make with with information. I knew what I was facing, and I was willing to say, like, for 2 months out of the year, I'm willing to make this trade-off for things to be more comfortable and more efficient the other 10 months out of the year.
Great. So Rebecca, what kind of questions are you seeing in the Q&A?
Sure. Hi, Marcos. People are
Hi.
just fascinated with all your apps. So if you've got time, if you can hop onto the Q&A again. Someone wants to know if you could tell them more about your heat pump dryer. I know that there aren't that many on the market yet. I'm going to actually drop a link to Energy Star, and you can find a list of all the available heat pump dryers currently on the market. But if you can tell them what model and, you know, how much does it cost, and, you know, how does it compare cost-wise, well, to getting a gas dryer, for example?
Oh, it's likely more expensive. Now, Amy, I think, actually has one of my old heat pump dryers.
I do.
And so maybe she can talk a little bit about that. But mine is an all-in-one. It's the signature model from LG, which is their hyper expensive, like, luxury brand. So I got it refurbished, but it's expensive. It's more expensive than your typical washer dryer. I can't, it's maybe $2,500 or something. But I love that I put the stuff in. I didn't need any venting, obviously, because there's no gas and there's no lint, because you're not pushing air through the clothes. The clothes aren't being denigrated by the heat and the air. I love the fact that I put the load in the morning, and then I come home and it's all dry, and I can just, at that point, just put it away, so that I don't have to worry about moving it back and forth. And I do love the efficiency of it. And like I said, the trade-off is that it takes about 5 hours to do a load from start to finish, because what you're doing, you're not blasting the clothes dry. What you're doing is you're extracting moisture. And so when you open, it's actually not it's a little warm. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's cool in there, but it's not hot. And so it doesn't heat up my room anything more than, because you saw it's in my room. I have a small house, so space efficiency was also a big factor in when I built this, along with efficiency. So I don't know what other models there are. I know GE, I think, has one as well that might not be as expensive, and it's something that for sure manufacturers are starting to look into more as electrification takes hold. So I'm actually excited where the technology is going. And like I said, a lot of the technology I pick is actually expensive because it's all fairly new. And my goal in a lot of ways is to help bring about adoption of this technology, so it becomes more commoditized and drives prices down, and then it becomes available to the masses.
Well, thank you for being an early adopter, Marcos, and inspiring so many people. And I know that Amy loves that heat pump dryer that you passed along to her.
I do. It's terrific. So yeah, Marcos bought it for his renovation, but then when he realized that he actually wanted even a smaller footprint and to get the all-in-one, then he asked us if we wanted his brand new Blomberg heat pump dryer plus washer, and I was like, yeah. So Marcos's electrification process has helped my own. All right, so we're going to move on to the very last. Thank you so much, Marcos. And if you can linger and answer, I'm sure that there's
I will.
A ton of questions down there. So
definitely.
Yeah. So thanks again. And you may have noticed that the last 3 homes in the tour had induction stoves and cooktops in their kitchen. Of all the gas-fired appliances, gas stoves are the one that people are the most reluctant to give up. Some of the reluctance is rooted in nostalgia or habit, or they like the aesthetic of a vintage stove, or just not realizing that there's something better out there. So now I want to introduce you to Arlene Baxter, who is a Red Oak realtor, who is the committee chair for the Bridge Association of Realtors Climate Action Committee. Welcome, Arlene. Tell us about the cooking demonstration video that we're about to watch.
All right, let me unmute myself. There we go. Hi, Amy. Thank you so much.
Hi.
So it's my pleasure to introduce this induction cooktop demonstration video. We are sponsored by the Bridge Association of Realtors. I had the pleasure of hanging out with Chef Rochelle Boucher of Kitchens to Life. She is a chef who also works a lot with top brands of various kinds of appliances. And we were out at the Monarch Premier Showroom. We were in the San Francisco one, but there's also one in the East Bay in Concord. And they have an amazing array of appliances and beautiful cookware to check out. So I suggest you do that if you're considering a change in your kitchen. Rochelle, you already heard from the indoor air quality person, but she also has a fan there. And Rochelle is called a super fan of induction cooking. I got to ask various questions about the benefits of induction cooking, and you've already heard from some of the other presenters about that, about how quick it is, how easy it is to clean the cooktops, and as well as having terrific indoor air quality. Let me just add one point, especially on behalf of our Climate Action Committee, which is any of you who might consider selling your home, or realtors who are getting properties ready, really urge you not to just swap out a gas stove for another gas stove. I personally have had to do that, and it doesn't feel right. We're basically saddling the environment and the next buyers with a dinosaur using fossil fuels. So if you possibly can, and we recognize that there are, as Marcos was just mentioning, there are differences in cost, but if you possibly can, go with electric, definitely go with induction if possible. And if that's not in the budget, then I urge you to not do anything, to let the buyers make that decision, possibly give them a credit towards a gas appliance. And then we hope that Bayren will increasingly have rebates for induction cooktops. So with that, I hope that already you've been inspired by some of the advantages of induction. And now you'll get to see a live demonstration of just how fun it is to actually cook on these induction cooktops with Chef Rochelle. So let's take a look.
Okay, thank you so much, Arlene. And we're gonna run the video now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arlene Baxter.
Oops, sorry about that, guys.
I am with the Bridge Association of Realtors, and I chair the Climate Action Committee. And it's my delight to be here as part of the Green Homes Tour at the Monarch Showroom, exploring electric kitchens. We are here to plug in, turn on, and cook up in an electric world. And it's just a treat to be here with Chef Rochelle.
Thank you so much. We are on the same path. It is really exciting. This is the Electric Kitchen Workshop at Monarch Premium Appliance in San Francisco. We are also putting Electric Kitchen Workshop in our showroom in Concord in the East Bay. So it's really a delight. I've been a chef in this world for decades. So I have worked on every high BTU gas and dual fuel range and these innocent looking induction cooktops next to it. I fell in love with induction hardcore 10 years ago, and now I can't work on anything else, and it's having its moment. So we are going to share some of our stories and hopefully some great examples today and have some fun.
Absolutely. So we want to make sure to cover certain topics for you. We're going to learn about the whole electric kitchen concept, myths and truths of today's electric kitchens and live cooking, the clean little secret of the appliance industry, and then we're going to take a tour of electric kitchen options, induction, convection, ventilation, and more.
I love it. We are going to get started. Well, I'm really happy to cook along to our story. Our menu today is, I've got a Thai basil chicken that is really wonderful, very easy to make, can easily be made vegetarian. We'll talk about that. And then would you do some simple things? I'll show you, let's talk about roasting a pepper. I can char tortilla, very simple stuff to sort of hopefully be inspirational.
Fun. It smells great already.
Right?
So let's get into the myth busting and some of the realities of induction cooktops.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the things I understand, I always tell people I live in that space between the appliance and the human. I squeeze right in there. So I understand that this is different. One of the things that's very true is there is a learning curve. So for example, I'm putting this on, we're gonna do a little boiling of water. So I'll show you a little bit about that. It's pretty exciting. So I put this on and then I select the hob area and we're going to start boiling water. This, by the way, is nice and cool, room temperature. So yes, there is
It's all electric display here.
It's an all electric
Yeah.
display. Now, some of them, some induction have knobs, understandably. So yes, you know, they can look very different. So there is not only a sort of which interface do you want, but then yes, there's a little bit of a learning of how to cook on it, which we can address. So that's the first truth, and I understand that.
Right, right.
Yes.
I was delighted just last night to be at friend's home
Yes.
who just transitioned from something that's very familiar, which is an old Wedgwood stove in
Yes.
an Oakland bungalow.
Wow.
And I was fortunate to convince them to go electric.
Oh, they were your clients.
Yes, they were.
Yes.
And your friends, so even better.
Good.
And so I got to cook a flourless chocolate cake in the convection oven and then make the ganache on the induction cooktop.
I love it.
And it was so lovely and clean and smooth. So
Yeah.
I'm excited, and I hope that we
you
can share the excitement with others of you of just how cool this surface and systems are.
I love it. And you know, another myth that you were kind of reminding me about was a little bit about power, right?
Right, power and control, because we all love to be able to, you know, look under the pot and control it with the knob. So talk about how it works with induction.
Absolutely. There's such a big myth is that, you know, it's not as powerful as gas. No, it is actually significantly, the water is boiling.
That's boiling.
Right. So yes,
boiling.
that's a fun little party trick when you can boil water in half or less of the time.
Wow.
But think of how that translates to cooking. It's fabulous. The other thing too is that not only is the water going to be boiling very quickly, but you also, one thing that's really true that's sort of an added bonus is that you don't need to have as giant ventilation as with big power gas. Now, certainly there are lots of options with ventilation, downdrafts, things like that. Downdraft happens to work really well with induction because it's not pulling a flame, right? So you get not only power and control here, but you get more choices and design options with your ventilation.
Absolutely, and very clean. I'm just thinking both my husband and the fellow last night, my friend client, are both tall. What do they constantly do? Run into the ventilation hood. So
now
they would love this.
This is a very special unit. This is called the Nikola Tesla switch. So but you're seeing the innovation that's starting to happen. This is a combination, but again, even if you do overhead, you can do a lot of different choices. Now I'll show you on the control side, watch this. Now when I shut this off, maybe you can see, then it goes off. Done.
And that's done.
Isn't that amazing? So again, think
and
how
there's
that,
and of course there's no heat. You know, there's no risk of me burning myself. I've got my paper on the cooktop, and it's
a little bit
fine.
hot from the residual heat, but you cannot imagine what a difference that makes in your life. Right?
From the potential of burning yourself,
And just heat in your house.
Right.
You have to
that's true
think
too.
about, now granted, one thing that is true is that induction cooktops are more expensive than the old kind of junky electric, the radiant, the coil, and sometimes more expensive than a gas cooktop, like a drop-in cooktop. But on the other hand, you have to sort of think about your ventilation. Are you blasting your AC all the time?
Right.
A lot of different things that will affect how you live. So it's kind of amazing.
Absolutely.
Now, one thing is, I'll turn this off for a minute in ventilation. While we could talk about some more myths, but one I know you wanted to talk to me about. We'll grab that magnet.
Yeah, I want to talk about what myths of what you can and cannot cook in, that people are afraid they have to get rid of all of their cookware.
Yes.
Obviously, some you might.
Yes.
But you certainly can do wok cooking and this adorable little
Isn't that great? It's a little Le Creuset magnet.
Yes, it is. And there you go. So this, in fact, would work on induction.
Absolutely. And I just turned it on. It's already smoking. So if the magnet
that's
sticks,
amazing.
That's right. I know. It's
that's
really,
amazing.
You
Yeah,
know, so one of the things, one of the true things about induction cooking, or there's sort of a myth and a truth when it comes to induction cooking and wok cooking. One of the things that is a myth, I know, right? The myth is that you cannot use woks. Well, that's not I mean, clearly.
There it is.
The one truth is that it gets so hot, you sometimes have to back it off.
You need that ventilation system.
Right. So I'm going to cook, this is a lot of fun. I'm just going to throw these vegetables in here. One thing that is true when it comes to wok cooking is that you need a big flat bottom wok. The bigger the bottom, because you don't get all this extra heat up here. But my gosh, this thing gets smoking hot. So it's pretty sensational. It was literally, it's a nice seasoned wok. So it's really something else. Now, if you're doing something like a fried rice where you really need a big surface area to get all of that crispy, you can do that in a big giant cast iron pan, and it's remarkable. So I can cook along here. Now you have, I think, a fun story about a family member. I love this. Talk about learning curve, right?
So, you know, it's one thing to try to inspire people who are my age and younger as homeowners, but the last time that I was outside of my own kitchen during the pandemic was actually to my father-in-law's home. He's 92 years old, lives alone.
Amazing.
Bless him, chose to remodel his kitchen, and I mentioned exploring induction cooktops.
Wow.
And he went with it.
That's amazing.
It is, and he loves it. And I got to cook on his induction cooktop. Again, I had the same experience of just being wowed of how quick it is, but also in complete envy and lust over how clean it is. That there's, it's you just wipe the surface, as opposed to, you know, I have a beautiful gas range, but it's got lots of little parts. It's got the grates.
The heavy grates.
Heavy grates, they're cast iron. To clean that thing is frankly a pain, and this is so simple, and it's actually beautiful too. So I confess I am a little bit in lust of this.
Well, you are one of my favorite evangelists, because you're going out there going, no, people, we're going to do this. That's amazing.
Well,
I mean,
if my 92-year-old father-in-law can, this age shall not stop you.
You know, and that touches on really two important truths, which is food is so much about tradition and habit and knowing things and how you do stuff. So I get it. It's important.
This is my Italian father-in-law who has
important.
Food has been his life, his mother's life, his grandmother's life.
Wow.
His mother used to come over from Italy and make ravioli. So food is very important in that family, as so many others. And the fact that he went induction at this stage, I just is quite wonderful.
I think we need to do a video with that guy.
I think we do.
So just so
Tina would be delighted.
That is come on.
Yeah.
What an advocate. So what I'm doing, just so
This is
everyone knows,
smelling really good.
and look at, come on, right?
And it's almost done.
It's amazing. So I had a whole bunch of vegetables that went in here. I put about 3/4 pound of ground chicken. You can do ground turkey. You can even do
whatever.
Sure, or tofu. You can go with vegetarian or non-meat choices of any sort. It's really just a simple stir fry. You can even do it without any additional protein. So come on, look at how fast, right? And then what I'll do, really simple at the end, I'm just going to add in some chopped shallot and garlic. And again, at this point, so one of the things that's really important about wok cooking, and when you have super high, like restaurant BTUs, you get a phenomenon called wok hay, where actually the polymers come from 50, 60,000 BTUs and can do a little bit of a change to the flavor profile of the food. Well, a couple things. So it's something that is really important. So in commercial kitchens, they're actually coming out with big wok hobs that have a big divot in them, and that wok gets smoking hot. But then the benefit is we are not getting hot. We are not getting hot. And look at this, handles, not hot.
That you don't burn yourself on.
Absolutely.
That's terrific.
So there are things when you start to cook with induction, there are sort of the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. right? Like
Yeah.
for me, when I have to bend down and stick my face down in the flame just to see.
And we all
what-
know that gesture of looking under the pot.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But I have learned, I've had a lot of time to go, I don't think that's fun anymore. So I'm adding in a little sauce. This is a really delicious sauce for this. It's and I'll make sure you guys have the recipe so you can try
Oh,
it
yeah.
on any type of cookware. We're not any type of cooking.
The aroma's fabulous.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And then just for kicks, I'll throw in a little bit of chilies. I happen to have some Thai lime leaf here. But yeah, so the other thing is, look, I can reach over and do all of these kind of very bold things. So it becomes a wonderful thing to get used to, along with the cleaning.
Right.
Now, I even have some additional things that I can show you guys, and we can just talk about those. So a myth, very much, is that we can't char a pepper. And I get that. There is no flame, right? Well, look at that.
Voila.
Charred.
A charred pepper.
Really
Very
beautiful.
charred.
It just takes, takes about the same amount of time in the flame, but I did it in the smoking hot wok.
And did you do this with oil or just a dry wok?
I did put a little bit of oil in the wok first because it needed a little bit of additional seasoning, but you can do it dry. You can do it in a big cast iron
It looks
pan.
like very happily charred.
It is. Absolutely. So then, and see how quickly that turns off.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now back here, what I can do, I know it's weird. Now this does get some residual heat, but you can put your paperwork right on there. We're fine. So incredible things. As a matter of fact, when you're cooking something super messy, you can actually put paper towels down and around and cook right with that. So couple more things. I'll just do a little egg for the top of this dish. You can serve this with a little bit of rice on the side. You can do a little rice noodles if you'd like. I'm just going to do a little fried egg just to be kind of traditional. So any other thoughts? I mean, we've talked about cooking and cleaning. One thing I do want to tell you is the clean little secret of the appliance industry. What is that? It is actually that so many of us in this industry, the head of R&D and innovation for, like, if you think about the biggest kind of meatiest gas appliances that you can think of in refrigeration, head of R&D, Induction superfan. All of us here, Induction superfans. My Decor rep that I just cooked with yesterday switched out her gas to Induction superfan. So there is a lot.
Well,
that's the
and
clean little secret.
We've all heard of a lot of big name chefs in the Bay Area who've switched exclusively to Induction.
Absolutely.
Cooking shows online, a lot just with Induction, even some small, like one burner Induction, which is very handy.
Those are.
A good way to start out.
They're a good way to get started. Now, something that is, we talked about that a little bit. You know, there is also my concept of the whole electric kitchen. We're very focused, understandably, on cooktops, right? Gas versus electric, or gas and electric. I don't want them to fight, right? However, there is a whole world of electric. Everything else in your kitchen is electric. So we sell lots of combi steam ovens, speed ovens. There's things like the Advantium. There's also everything, your ventilation, refrigeration, even convection ovens. If people knew, and I try to show as many people as possible, everything you can do at a convection oven and how you can expand your cooking beyond just the cooktop, you'd be amazed. So nowadays, when people say, oh, I need a 48-inch range and double oven, no. We can actually narrow that footprint, still make it look sexy and fun, but yet you don't need an additional appliance for each and everything that you do.
Yeah, that's a different mindset for people.
It really is.
Well, and then there's also the health aspect,
big
which
time.
is huge, that you're not breathing in gas fumes at all.
Absolutely.
And having that sort of low-level gas smell in your home. One of the members of my climate action committee switched over and had been away from her gas stove for a while, came back to it after several months of living away, and was sort of blown away.
Sort of resensitized, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. She hadn't noticed it, and I'm sure most of us don't notice. But when you're away from it for a while, then you do. And really appreciate the health benefits of not having gas at all in your kitchen. Well, please show our friends here this beautiful finished product that smells
Lovely.
delightful.
Thank you.
And is beautiful as well.
I just topped it with some Thai basil, some cilantro, a couple of lime wedges. It's a really
so
nice
easy
dish.
and great and quick. So then let's close out with a final myth, talking about the fact that the perception is, or myth is,
yes,
that induction is always more expensive.
I understand that. Trust me. We have here and in many other locations, there's a huge range of things that you can purchase from a price point. But also there are now rebates that are starting to happen. We are very fortunate to work with Bayren, and Bayren provides all kinds of rebates, not only from, water heaters and things, but also for your, for switching from gas to induction. So there's some really wonderful things out there. And again, when you look at the larger picture, you can find pretty incredible savings when it comes to sort of the big picture of everything.
And the long-term picture too. So I hope this has been an inspiration for people. It certainly has been for me.
Well, I love it. There's my charred pepper, charred tortilla. I think you can see there's a lot of things you can do. And my cleanup, dreamy.
Incredible.
So, for me, I'm really honored to know that you're out there doing this work. We are now a team forever, and we hope that's been inspirational. For me, I just now expect so much more from a cooktop.
Right.
It's changed, and who knew 5 years ago where we would all be now? It's really an honor to be here with you today.
It's exciting. I hope that more of you will convert to induction as part of your green home.
We're here to help.
Okay, thank you so much to Rochelle and Arlene. Rochelle is the go-to person and bridge between electrification advocates and appliance manufacturers, and she's been doing impactful work for a long time, most recently with the Building Decarbonization Coalition, the Sierra Club, and more. So I really appreciate that Arlene and Rochelle put together that video for us. So that's it for today's programming. And I want to invite you to return next Sunday to see the next 6 homes. And with our experts next Sunday, we'll do a deep dive into electric heating and cooling options, and also how to get free advice and access to rebates from Bayren. We'll also have an extended Q&A session at the end of Sunday's programming with 4 experts, an architect, Kate Ledger, who you met today, a home energy advisor, Joe Kaprosky, a homeowner and solar expert, Wei Tai Kwok, and also an electric heating expert, that's Amy Dryden. So definitely bring your questions. So trying to move the slide along here, I just want to thank everyone who tuned in today, and the lovely homeowners and the renters who let me and now you into their homes. And thank you again to our beloved sponsors. And I want to leave you with some parting thoughts. With every home upgrade, think about the future, especially the changes that global warming has in store for us, and the opportunity you have to advance a clean, green, resilient future. Ground your decisions in your care for the environment and your care for your own and your family's health. Do not sleepwalk through your home upgrades, doing what's been done before just because you're on autopilot or your contractor is on autopilot. Get off fossil fuels. You don't need them. Be in the vanguard. And don't assume options are out of reach for you. If they are, they may be in reach next year, or there may be options that you don't know about yet. Be dogged and get curious. If you hit a wall, need advice, or want to know your options, help exists. And tune in next Sunday and find out about some of that free help that exists to help you along with these upgrades. And if you have learned something valuable from this event or got inspired, I urge you to donate at eastbaygreenhome.com on the registration page to help support this event. So hopefully I will see all of you next Sunday. Thank you, everyone.